episode 15 of the Hidden Pearls podcast. My name is Emma Kittle, and I am joined by the one and only James Kittle.
Hi, everybody. How we doing?
We're super excited to have this show. We are still in Arizona, still feeling out where we're going to be, but I think we're going to be here through the end of the season, through the end of the year. So what's up, Arizona? We're here. Hidden Pearls podcast is a show where we tell the stories of the people and the communities impacted by social and environmental injustices. And so today on our show, we're going to be talking with the one and only Ross Dwelley. So we're super, super excited to have another tight end on. And then also the Autism Tree Foundation, which is, the interview blows my mind. So I'm super excited to get right into that. So George, with that being said, why don't you toss it on over to BK for the Mindful Minute in the Quote Corner.
BK, it's all you. Also, shout out to Ross the Boss. You killed it. So, BK, Mindful Minute, let's go. And
to Danielle for feeding him. And if you guys don't follow Danielle on Instagram, Chef Boy Dahle, I'll link it. All right, let's get right into it. Thanks, guys.
Action! Hey, I'm here with Emma Lou, and we're coming at you with this week's Quote Corner and Mindful Minute as we enter into the very festive holiday season. So we hope all of you and yours are doing great and have a super Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, or any other thing that you're celebrating, and that you are able to be with loved ones in a safe way. So this week for the Quote Corner, here's our quote from Viktor Frankl, World War II concentration camp survivor, wrote some pretty heavy and beautiful stuff about man's search for meaning. So give that a shake. Quote for this week: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I'll hit it one more time. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. All about the pause, the space. All right, Amy.
Okay, thanks, Puppy. So this week our Mindful Minute is calm mind. So it's stage 3. So our quote today actually touches on all 3 of the last remaining stages of mindful awareness. Calm mind, today's focus, controlled breath, and conscious awareness. We have explained before that these stages are not strictly a linear process and that each stage overlaps and influences the others. This is particularly true for these 3 stages. Each are building blocks for the others, and it is hard to effectively enter one of these stages without also developing skills in the others. But when we are able to develop a practice that leads us to being able to maintain a calm mind, even in the midst of conflict, stress, threats, and chaos, it is then that the world of awareness and its benefits truly open up to us. For it is in the calm mind that we are able to recognize and use the space that falls between stimulus and response. If the mind is calm, if it is not racing, contemplating survival, or in the midst of freeze, fight, or flight, we, that is the true and higher self we aspire for, are then able to make a conscious choice, one consistent with our goals, our values, and our priorities based on who we have chosen to be. That is the goal of all of this: being aware, being present in the moment and in touch with the self, and then making choices about how we want to live our life and respond to whatever happens in our life.
Okay, so those choices that we're fighting to try to grasp onto within those spaces. So here's just a little follow-up quote we like from Aristotle on that. Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. So this is about preparing for that and developing those skills. So action step for the week. This week in your breath and meditation practices, focus on increasing your awareness of all stimuli that might cause or draw out a response. Try to sit with it, whatever it is, without judgment, spinning a story, or assessing it as either good or bad. Just feel it for what it is, like you were watching a movie with you in it, and this is happening, and you're just seeing it. Review the thoughts and emotions that are brought up, realizing that they are not good or bad. They are just thoughts and emotions. Then with intention and deliberation, choose a response that reflects who you are and who you want to be in these moments. Now, before you can make that choice, you have to know who you want to be. That's part of the whole know thyself thing, so you can be thyself. So again, sit back, reflect on it, and then make a choice for your response that reflects who you are and or who you want to be in those moments. Ask yourself what this person, that is the person you're trying to become, what would they do? And then with intention and purpose, choose to do that thing, to be that person in that moment. Avoid reactions and replace them with chosen, intentional, and deliberate responses. Again, all of this is possible because of the meditation and breath work you do in preparation. Stay in your practice, grow into the choices you want, and find all the pauses in your life. Happy holidays. Quote away. Hope your minutes are all mindful. All right. Love you.
1 second behind. You gotta do it when we say one.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, action. Yeah, it's okay.
Close enough. Close enough.
Okay, yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We like it.
That's funny. All right.
Like that, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Okay, welcome 49ers. We are very excited. It's been a long time coming, but we finally have another tight end, one of our own, the one, the only Ross Dwelley.
The one and only, the Rasta Bob.
How's it going? Let's go. I'm
Let's
excited.
go, baby. Ross Dwelley in the house. Hidden Pearls podcast. We are excited. Gosh dang it. I'm so excited for this interview, Ross. Look at your beautiful smiling face.
You guys
Let's
never,
ride.
and you
Let's
never
ride.
get to see each other.
Never.
Never.
That's actually the only way we get
Yeah,
to see
we don't spend much time with each other at all.
via Zoom at this point.
All right, well, let's learn a little bit of the background of Ross. So first, Ross, we just have to say you've been doing an excellent job taking up the slack since GK has been out of the lineup, and we are very excited to talk to you about that.
Yes, sir.
You're not trash.
I know.
You're not trash.
No, but Rasta boss.
All
I
right, Ross.
appreciate that.
So Ross played college ball at the University of San Diego. He was signed by the Niners as an undrafted free agent in April of 2018. He is listed at 6'5", 235 pounds. High school at Oak Ridge
go.
High School, El Dorado, California.
Too far.
You were a quarterback and then did not play junior year to focus on baseball. So you
Yes.
know that. Tell us about your baseball.
Were you just
days.
like really scrawny and gave it up? Or
No,
you knew that being a quarterback sucked and you couldn't play anywhere else. There was no value or what?
maybe a little bit played into that. No. I actually made I tried out because I was super into baseball, travel baseball and everything, and high school baseball. And I actually tried out for the Red Sox scout team, like their spring scout team. And I made it. So that actually ran through, they played games through the fall when football season would be. So I kind of had to make a decision if I wanted to do that, or if I want to play football. And I just kind of decided to go with baseball. And then instantly, during the season, I was just missing football, and some of my friends are still playing ball and stuff. So I just decided going into my senior year, I just wanted to give it everything I had for football too, and just see what happened.
All right. And then, but did you also then you played high school ball then your senior year, stayed with that?
What
Yeah.
position?
I played tight end during my senior year. Yeah.
And what about
So-
baseball? Did you play in baseball?
I played first base. Yeah. So I tore my labrum. I was playing quarterback up until my sophomore year. And I tore my labrum. And so I rehabbed it. And for some reason, I was good playing baseball, but throwing a football, that motion was really cumbersome on it. So that was and then I switched halfway through my sophomore year of high school to tight end. And then, so I took that year off. My shoulder was feeling a lot better. And then I just went back to football my senior year.
Okay. Now at your high school, what kind of offense did you run? Were you guys a spread or what?
No, we were actually a pro style.
Okay.
So it was super nice to be a tight end
Okay, so
in that
stand
offense.
down
Yeah.
and some blocking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I thought I was blocking, but looking back on it, I probably I had no clue what I was doing.
From high school?
He was actually, is this true fact or not? You were
Yeah.
named team MVP after your senior year. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Five tutties, is that right? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so if
Something
you're such
like
a hotshot baseball guy, what happened at the end? Why'd you end up going football instead of
You missed the
I just love football. Like I got way more out of it than I did baseball, like camaraderie wise, and just like the team aspect of it too. Like there's just no better feeling of like just being out there with the team and like working so hard to accomplish a goal. Like it was crazy. I just got more out of it than I did baseball.
Plus you heard George was at the Niners and you wanted to go there probably, right?
I can get that guy.
Destined.
Destined to be
You're
together.
destined to become.
Okay, so then how
Yeah.
excited to go to University of San Diego?
Well, it was my only like offer to be on like a D, even though they were D1 AA, it was my only like D1 offer to be like on the roster. Even though they didn't like technically give scholarships because we were in a non-scholarship league. I was able to get like some financial aid and stuff, so I was able to make it work. And it's such a beautiful campus, and like I went down to San Diego on my official visit, and it was crazy, and I just fell in love like instantly. It was sick.
You were an engineer, so that's a pretty serious degree to take on as a college athlete.
Yeah, it was 100% a grind. Like looking back on it, I was like, damn, I probably could have done a lot more cooler stuff like if I wasn't doing that. But I definitely don't regret it because it was a grind to do, and I was really like proud when I got it at the end.
So tell me, it's an industrial engineer degree, right? So my dad was a hydraulic engineer and designed, trailer systems and all that kind of stuff. So industrial, what exactly did you build or focus on? What does that do?
It mostly works on like efficiency and a lot like with manufacturing. So it's kind of like a hybrid between like a business degree and an engineering degree. So it was kind of cool in that aspect where I took like a bunch of business classes, but I was also like taking engineering classes. It also worked a lot like in simulation. So I was on the like computer programs a lot, like developing like these designs for like manufacturing and stuff, and like creating the most out of the product while using the least amount of money. So that's kind of like the general summary of it.
Cool.
Kind of boring stuff looking back on it, but
so after, obviously, hopefully you have a very long career, but do you have any desire, like, do you miss the engineer side? Would you want to do something afterwards?
Not at all. No, I don't. Like, I really don't miss it at all. And like when I was doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a grind. And I'm just happy to be doing what I'm doing obviously now. And I want to do this for as long as I can. And then I don't really have any plans after football, like doing anything engineering wise. So, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, never know.
Dwelley, I do have a question for you. So you went to the University of San Diego, right?
Yeah.
San Diego University.
University of San Diego. Yeah. USD.
What was your mascot?
What is that?
What was your mascot?
A Torero.
Yeah.
One more time for the people in the back.
Yep.
Toreros, baby.
Torero.
What is that?
It's like a bullfighter.
It's a what?
It's like a bullfighter. Like they hold up that red like cape, and like the bull like runs at them. It's a bullfighter.
So they kill innocent animals for sport.
I don't think they kill them. I don't think they kill them. I think it's like just something in Spain they do.
Pretty sure they fight them to the death.
No, it's just for show.
I couldn't find a picture of him anywhere, but I'm sure there was somewhere.
The mascot?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Diego.
Well, it's a photo of Ross Dwelley's face.
So what was your did you have like a hand signal or something, like as a bullfighter?
Right.
Were you throwing the flag around? Were you stabbing
No,
something?
we really didn't have a signal at all. It was
Is there
kind of like
guys-
this, like a bull, like a bull.
Okay.
Like a bull. We call it the bull pit.
Okay.
But that's really it. No, Rose up. Sco Rose. Oh, Sco Rose. We did that. Sco Rose. Yeah.
Okay, so let's favorite thing about California, San Diego, Bay Area. Obviously, pretty exciting that you got to stay in California. What's your favorite thing about California, and what's your favorite part of California?
Ooh.
Definitely San Diego is my favorite part. I'd been in NorCal like most of my life. I moved around a really good amount up until like 4th grade as a kid. But then up until then, like from 4th grade on, I was in Sacramento. So I don't know. I just love San Diego so much. Like the weather is crazy. It's just like pretty constant year round.
Dwelley,
Say again.
Sorry, follow-up question. You said you moved around a bunch when you were a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a reason why? Because you had to go to so many different schools, is why you have such a loving and outgoing personality? Because you know how to meet new people?
Possibly that might play into it. I did live, I'm trying to, like, before 4th grade, I was born in California. We moved to New Jersey. Then we moved to Salt Lake City. Then we moved to Reno, Nevada. Then we moved to Sacramento, where I lived from 4th grade on.
Where are you born?
It's in Northern California as well. So I was there for a little bit.
Well, there we go. And then your family is where now? Where do you guys off?
They're in Reno. They all live in Reno now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun
Moved
to get
over
to
there.
your family, just over the last few years. So
They love you guys too.
we love them. They're great. So what's one of the best or toughest lessons that your family has taught you?
I feel like I learned a good amount of discipline like when I was younger. Like my dad, we had like a pretty big yard like as a kid, like growing up in Sacramento, like at our house that I stayed most at. Like, and we lived under like these big oak trees that would just like shed leaves like all the time. And like I just had a bunch of chores like growing up as a kid, and all I wanted to do is just like play video games with the boys, and my dad would like make me like come out and do a bunch of like chores, clean up, doing the pool filters, mowing the lawns. We had a wood fireplace, so he would like get cords of logs, and I'd put them in the wheelbarrow, roll them all the way to the backyard, stack them up. Like it was just like chores like growing up as a kid. I don't know, he taught me discipline growing up.
I remember a discipline story from Bruce. So we had horses growing up, and this is when we were living in Iowa, and Bruce would, well, it's not Bruce made us, but you had to have the animals. But it'd be like freezing outside, right? We're like head to toe, oversized Carhartt as these little kids. And you have to go and fetch water to take to the horses because the hose is frozen. So you have to lug giant buckets of water. And by like your 3rd trip, you're completely covered in water and you're completely frozen. You're like flaky. You're like walking through the ice to get there. Those are my memories.
You gotta love it.
I just remember from the ice days of Bruce would have he'd have a pickup truck, and we'd hook up that was fun. Like a inner tube that you'd go tubing on in the water. But we'd do it. We had like 20 acres in our backyard, and it was a big hill. It wasn't too like tall, but it was just long, and you go up and you got like 100 yards to go down, and he'd hook us up to the back on an inner tube, and he would just do donuts and just send us flying in the snow.
That's sick.
That's good.
That's right. Sick.
Yeah, we had some good times.
Where was that? Was that in Oklahoma or in
Iowa?
That was in
Iowa.
Iowa City. So let's talk about you and GK. So Ross, do you remember meeting George for the first time, and what was that experience like? It is an experience.
He actually told me earlier, like that was one of the kind of summary questions. He's like, we'll talk about like how we met and stuff. I'm like, damn, I'm trying to remember how we did meet. And I was trying to remember, and I feel like I remember, like I was going to like my first meeting as like a tight end, like, and we were all together because the rookies were at OTAs for like a couple of weeks. Wait, no, rookies had just come into OTAs because vets were there before the rookies came in. Sorry, I got my phone. And so I was just coming in, and I guess like the first day that I was there, I saw Selleck or something in the bathroom or something, and I didn't know it was Selleck or something, and I just didn't even acknowledge him because I don't even remember this, like seeing him, but I guess he saw me. Do you remember that?
Yeah, keep going.
And so I come into the meeting, like just like a rookie. I'm like, all right, I gotta make friends with the guys, like blah blah blah. And I walk in, they're like, Dwelley, you're getting fined, like blah blah. And I'm like, wait, what? Like I'm getting fined. Like instantly, I'm like, what did I do? Like what? I haven't even done anything. And Selec's like, I saw you yesterday, man, and you didn't even acknowledge me. That's a fine. And George is like, yeah, man, that's a fine. Like, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
what the hell, man? Like,
oh, yeah, no. So this is the story behind that. So Garrett comes in to the meeting room because like you were just there like doing physicals or something like that. Like,
yeah.
You didn't come to the meetings. So the next day, Garrett comes in and he goes, you know what? We got to find Dwelley. And for all those out there, we have a fine board and it goes into a pot and we usually buy Christmas presents with it for families in the Bay Area is what we usually do. This year's a little different because we're in Glendale, but we're trying to figure something out. But anyway, so we find guys and it's from performance-ish, but it's mostly off the field stuff that you just mess around with guys. Anyway, so we were like, we got to find Dwelley because it's his first day in the meeting room. And then Garrett, his first thing is he was like, yeah, man, I met him yesterday in the bathroom. I said, what's up, Dwelley? Like, welcome to the team. And he just looked at me and just walked right past me. Didn't say a word to me. And we're
Don't
all
remember this little.
Oh, Garrett, we were crying. Like it was so fun. As you guys know, Garrett Selleck is the #1 storyteller in the world.
#1.
So incredible. But he just had us crying laughing. So we're like, yeah, we might as well mess with Dwelley first day here. Like just make it feel like he's one of the boys. It was so
How much was the fine?
Yeah, a couple hundred.
Say it again.
How much was the fine? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, like 100 or a couple hundred. Yeah,
Right.
like nothing crazy, just because I just literally got in there. But yeah, I was like, what is going on? And I was instantly just like, okay, like this. I like this group, like instantly.
Yeah, I will say this: the San Francisco 49er tight ends, we do OTAs very well. From meetings to practice to what we do on the weekends, we have a good time. I missed OTAs this year.
I know.
So Ross, let's talk a little bit about, so thinking about being in the Niner room and all that kind of stuff. And you can either incorporate this as a Niner story about you two and George are playing, but we like to look at like who might be some of your favorite kind of sports characters, you know, maybe favorite football player or something like that. And then why? Like who did you kind of look up to and emulate when you were growing up? Like what kind of players? And if you can stay with football, going to the baseball world, that'd be great. But if you gotta go, you can. It's okay. There's a few guys.
Yeah, there's a few guys. I mean, I grew up like a huge Broncos fan, just because my parents were both like mainly from Colorado, and they went to Colorado State. So I was like 5 years old, I think, when the Niners, or excuse me, I said the Niners, when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. So like that was kind of like I emulated like Elway and kind of like guys like that because I was like mainly wanting to be a quarterback. And then kind of as I started like transition to tight end, that was right when sort of like Gronkowski was taking over the league, like his first few years. So I loved him as a player. So kind of those two dudes mainly that I can think of. Gronk was just a beast. I know that's one of George's like favorite
Huge
players
fan.
too. Yeah.
Huge fan.
Well, so with your time in the league now, and you've been around some ball players, you know, obviously if you with the Red Sox, right, you saw some players there and all that. So just thinking in general, like what are some characteristics or traits that you see that are common between great players?
I mean, it kind of sounds cliche, but just like being like super hardworking and doing the extra stuff that other people, you know, aren't willing to do. That kind of like, because you gotta like separate yourself somehow, because at this point, like everyone's talented and everyone, you know, athletically is gifted. But I just feel like you just gotta do some of the little things that separate you from the people who aren't willing to do those things. I feel like that's kind of what I pride myself on. Whether it's like studying, doing like extra stuff for your body, or like extra lifting like during the off season, or like taking your nutrition to the next level, just like stuff like that, sleep, all that, just the little like details, I feel like is the main thing that I like to pride myself in.
Okay. And anybody that you've been around that really emulates that?
That was some good stuff right there, man. I love that. Get me down.
I appreciate it.
You know, it's
I
interesting
mean,
though. Go ahead.
I mean, just to answer your question, I feel like it's just like I learned that from like my family. Just growing up, just that like I talk about like the discipline and like just stuff like that. Just like I feel like that's kind of like the basis of like who I am. So
No, I was just going to say that, you know, everybody looks for some kind of silver bullet or magic potion or secret weapon and all that. And, you know, the secret is there is no secret, right? It's every day doing it, even if you don't feel like it, and doing the hard little things and doing them consistently in a way that helps you kind of, like you said, separate yourself or get better.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and George's quote, like he said it a couple times, like when he's breaking down the team or something. But and I was the first time I heard the quote was from him. I don't know if he heard it from you or I think maybe he said that. But like small, consistent steps in the right direction lead to success. I might have butchered that, but you can probably say it correctly.
it's all good. Same thing.
Yeah,
Just keep.
it's a really good quote, man.
Get up every day.
Yeah, that was Bruce, right? Yeah.
In front of the other. Well, let's talk a little bit. So, you know, one of the things we work on is mindful awareness, mental prep for players and all that kind of stuff. So can you talk to us a little bit about kind of your development from kind of high school, you know, into, and maybe baseball and football are different. I don't know if they were or not. And then kind of what you do in college and then now in the NFL. So like, what's your mental game practice and how has that evolved over the years and how's it helped you?
It's evolved a ton. Like I had zero real mental game up through like probably the last couple of years of college. Like in high school, I don't even remember like doing anything really for my like mental side of my game. I was just all focused on the physical aspect. And George kind of like reminds me of myself in a way where, you know, he kind of like has developed so much, you know, from like I was like pretty a scrawny kid. And then like I've kind of like developed physically throughout the years, like up until now, obviously. So that's definitely helped in like the blocking aspect, like getting stronger and all that stuff. But mentally, like now I use the Calm app. I know George does too. Yeah, Danielle and I like to do like sleep meditations before we go, just like a minute sleep meditation. I do the brain training that the team offers. So that's pretty great. Like I kind of found that out like last year. So that's been great for like the mental aspect. Those are kind of the main things.
Are you a big visualization guy? Do you visualize plays or anything like that?
Yeah, like I feel like my hour massage, like each week, I like visualize plays from whether it's the last game or like the stuff coming up. I kind of take that time to just visualize. And definitely like when I'm doing like those meditations, I'm definitely like trying to visualize, you know, successes or future successes or past successes.
Okay. Anything else in the game, in your toolbox that you like for the mental prep stuff, or is that?
I mean, no, those are kind of the main things, like brain training, the meditations.
You think since starting to date Danielle and eating really bomb food all the time, do you think that's changed your game?
That's definitely has changed my game, and 100%. I'll tell her that all the time. Like, keep me fed and stuff. Like, putting some weight on me because I used to be pretty scrawny and like I shed weight pretty easily. It definitely helps keeping on the pounds, especially like during the off season when like we're lifting a bunch and training a bunch. Yeah, running a lot. It definitely helps.
All right. Well, cool. Well, is it time for
Fashion? Okay, so every week we like to talk about the fashion of football. So Ross, since you're our guest, we're going to go ahead and start with you. So please talk a little bit about, talk to us about what your key influences are for putting your game day selection together. I know things may have changed a little bit with the situation going on, but what's kind of your style vibe, and do you have any pieces to share with us?
I'm excited about
my style vibe is super my style vibe is super chill. I mean, we moved to Arizona here, so I pride myself on being like a light packer. So I brought like one bag with me. So my style is pretty limited here, but I do like certain brands. Like, can you say like certain brands and stuff?
You can do whatever you want.
whatever you want to do, man.
Okay. I mean, I love like my Cut shirts. Cuts is kind of like my main like shirt brand. I feel like they fit like the tall person.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Shoes.
Are you an extra large long then? Do they give you the longs? Is that what you do?
No, you don't even like. I don't even order the longs with them. Like it just comes long in general.
You wear the double XL or just the single XL?
I think it's a double.
Yeah, I think it's a double too, because they're like our XL. It's a good shirt.
I think it's a double XL.
Do you usually rock a flannel when you're not gaming? When you're hanging around the house with the ladies?
Yeah, this is my chill flannel for sure. Like I wear this all the time. I'll just like come home. I just like jumped in the pool. Like our pool is literally like 40 degrees, I swear. So it's like an ice bath. And then I just like shower and put this on basically every day.
How many did you bring with you?
How many flannels?
Yeah, just a light pack.
Literally just this one. Like when I tell you, I brought one bag and I have 2 drawers. That's how light a pack I am.
Or not.
Say it again.
So do it often.
Well,
So what are your go-to shoes every day?
Okay, I can show. Oh, I mean, my main shoes that I wear to the hotel and to work right now are these bad boys.
Yay.
Little Birkenstock action. Yeah.
Hell
yeah.
That's awesome.
And then these shoes that we got at the Super Bowl actually are like some of my favorite shoes. Yeah, like the comfiest shoes ever. They got like some sort of like sole in them or something. I'm not really sure what, but it's super comfy.
They're very nice shoes.
Yeah.
Your game day swag is like, what do you like? You're not a suit and coat guy or any of that stuff. What do you do?
No, I've been wanting to. Danielle actually for my birthday got me like a coupon, or not a coupon, but like she's gonna get me a suit at this place called Indochino. We just haven't like gone and got me like tailored up and stuff. Okay. But I definitely want to do that. But no, really just wear to games like just some nice like Lulu sort of like, I think they're called ABC pants. A nice like cut shirt and then like some shoes.
Love it.
I love his hat, by the way.
Clean. I like it.
All right, guys, this is what I'm rocking. I wear them on a consistent basis. I'm a big fan of these guys. I'm also running out of shoes to show you guys because I am not a light packer, but I can only do so many shoes. I'm a big fan of these Vapor Maxes. I'm pretty sure these are I want to say they're made out of recycled material. I'm not entirely sure. Nike sent it to me. There's no laces. You literally pull in the back right here, and it tightens them. What is that? Zero effort. I like convenience. One of my favorite things of all time. I know they're super comfortable. They're easy to slip on and off. And I gained like half an inch in them. So I'm an actual super tall. Hey. And they go with everything because they're
still taller than you though.
Sorry, you cut out. I couldn't hear you. And then
I'm still taller than you though.
I'm faster.
All right.
Damn you, Dwelley.
Well, Ross.
Not if I take you out the knees, you'll be just as tall.
Let's cut each other.
Double spirit horse.
This season has been a little bit
crazy.
Just different, a little odd for everybody in all kinds of different ways. So I don't know that we need to go into too much about that. So, everybody kind of knows where we are and all that stuff. I just want to know, kind of looking back, with everything that was going on from the move to California and your off season with COVID and then all the COVID protocols and then too, you being a guy that now, you're more of a regular, and then with all the new faces and all that kind of stuff, just what are some of the lessons that maybe you've taken from just being around the team this year and, struggling through the games and all that kind of stuff and COVID? I mean, anything kind of jump out at you if you think back on things?
I mean, don't really take stuff for granted just because who knows what's going to happen, because this year has been, crazy. Like, we're just moving like we got kicked out of our county. We're here in Arizona. We're all just trying to like make the best of it. Obviously the season isn't like what we wanted win-loss wise, but I've still just had a great time this year, and it'll be great to have George back. Definitely been missed in the tight end room and on the team. So it'll be fun. It's already been a great week to these last couple of practices.
It's been fun.
Good. Even though like we've been eliminated from playoffs and all that, like everyone's still, showing up to working their asses off. And it's like good vibes out there at practice. So that's super nice.
Great practice today. Guys were catching the ball well. It was a day of football.
Well, it should be fun to play well and, win or lose or whatever, just to show up and really, especially against two rivals within the division and both likely playoff bound, obviously. And so just to put a dent in their world would be really fun. So anyway, okay. Cool. All right, let's see. Then, so part of we talked a little bit about this beforehand, but the Hidden Pearls podcast. So part of our show is really about, we have you guys talking, but a lot of it's about sharing the untold stories of the people and communities impacted by social and environmental injustice. So we always like to talk with our guest a little bit about kind of the role of, service or giving back in your life, kind of growing up and all that. And so I know as an NFL athlete, you've been busy because you did the Martha's Kitchen stuff. I know that. A couple of years you've done My Cause, My Cleats with the Autism Tree Project Foundation. We're going to talk a little bid more about them. They're our charity focus this week. So, but kind of growing up, did you guys have a family practice or anything, or like what'd you learn about that at home, if anything?
I'm trying to think like if we did anything growing up, like charity wise. I mean, me and my mom would go to like some soup kitchens, like kind of around the holidays, to serve the homeless. But other than that, like I kind of just went to my first year of college. USD was like there was a redshirt senior tight end who was the team liaison of the Autism Tree Project Foundation. And I was there as like a true freshman, and he kind of like brought me to one of the events, and he was about to graduate. So he needed there was going to be a new, team liaison. And so after that event, like I was like, wow, this is a really cool thing. And he said like, somehow he got it figured out how I could be the next like team liaison, and he talked to who he needed to talk to. And so I just kind of like, after that first event and after he graduated, I kind of like stepped into that role. And I started working a lot with them. So that's kind of like how I got involved with them. But I don't really,
about, how we actually did this. So what were we doing? I don't remember, but I ran into Ross, and Ross comes right up to me and he's like, Emma, we have to do the Autism Tree. I love your podcast, but I have an organization. We have to feature them. Like, it's going to be great. And I was like, yeah, like, this is great, because at the beginning, that was probably like in October, like beginning of October. And so we're still like very much, and as you all know, this is our first season. And so we're kind of like putting pieces together. So to have Ross come up and already have an organization that you were so excited about, that was very touching and very exciting. But then to actually have our pre-call with the organization, and I told him that story about how you were so excited to feature them and talk about them. The overall, and you guys are going to see this in the next episode, but just, it's called an autism tree because the tree represents the family and the communities of everyone around them. So whether you are directly affected by autism, whether you know somebody, whether you are just volunteering and you want to help, but it's a big tree and it branches out, and they are in love with Ross. There's no other way around it. And it's really cool to see because obviously, and you're going to hear about this too later, but just the challenges, like mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, like the things that these families go through, and then to have someone like Ross step in, you're literally a superhero to them. So it was
they're
great.
awesome. Yeah, it's cool to hear that. They're awesome. Yeah.
Well, Ross, I'd love to hear some of your takeaways, about your involvement while you were at USD with autism and the families and kids that, been diagnosed and were dealing with it. So that would be, I think, interesting.
Yeah.
Our next segment with Dana and Garrett, they do a good job. So we cover a bunch of that, but I, just kind of curious about that. And then I will just say this, the story that kept coming back. And so the Duggan family, which you were eventually paired with, I think your last 2 years, if that's right.
Yeah.
They still come up, and actually it's interesting because we met them because we were on the sidelines pre-COVID a year ago.
Yeah. They were there at a game, huh?
Yeah, because your mom and dad came up, and we were kind of hanging there where we always do down the one end zone, kind of on the corner. They had the Duggans with them and kind of introduced them that way. I didn't quite get the whole picture of them, but because they reminded me that we had met them anyway that way. So it's pretty cool that relationship from USD has carried on, and the impact that you've had on really just the relationship. And it's an odd thing about athletics, how the attention and caring, genuine caring from somebody like that with a family can just kind of lift them up and everything. So I know you've had a huge impact with them, and I know that relationship stays a little bit more. So anyway, any kind of, what were the lessons, or what did you take from all that, and why have you stayed so true blue to this group of folks? Because the tree, they claim you as one of their roots now. You are one of the roots.
Wow, that's cool.
It is cool. It really is. And
that's
so
awesome.
Definitely part of the family.
Yeah, no, they're like such a great group of people who run that. And some of the main like things I remember are we do each year around the holidays, we did like where we would have a bunch of families come in and do kind of like a Christmas celebration, where like we had a Santa Claus, we had a bunch of stuff set up, like where you could make Christmas cookies, like face painting, all those like kind of events, where a bunch of families came in. And so each year I would just meet a bunch of the families through there. And so that was super special to go to, and just seeing like the kids when they would like sit on Santa's lap, like it was crazy, like their reactions. And then obviously, like you said, the Dungans, like being paired up with them, those last couple of years of my career there at USD, like I became so close to them because they took it like so seriously, and they made the effort to reach out to you and like make gatherings, like have barbecues, like take the kids we went to the water park a couple times. And so I just thought that was super cool how, they would have like events at their house where like we would come over, and Danielle came over a few times as well. And just like the bonds that we made just from like, doing those things, it was pretty great. And we just, like you said, we still just talk to this day. It was cool to bring them to that Packers game. I think it was the Packers game, not the NFC Championship, but the one during the regular season last year that they came to. So that was a sick game that we got a big win in. So it's been cool.
Rams.
Oh, I thought, okay.
When the lights are on, Ross Dwelley shows
He
up.
does.
It's like 100%.
Mr. Third Down, get a TD, all that kind of stuff. So, all right. Well, let's see this. Well, Ross, I guess, we're going to make a couple plugs with Dana and Garrett and their thing, but just from your role with, if you were talking to people about autism, what's something you could, some kind of enlightenment that you might share about autism, or families, working with a child diagnosed with that? And what would you encourage people to maybe do or participate in, or what would you like to share with folks?
I mean, these are good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just think on this one for a little bit.
You're good.
I mean, just in general, I would say just make the effort. Like sometimes it's hard to communicate with a kid with autism, but if you really just try and make the effort and try and listen to them and listen to, you know, what they're trying to say, you really like find a great genuine soul and someone who's like super bright and will honestly like change your life. When you just make that initial effort that might be difficult at first, and just either go to an event, an autism event, or, you know, something like that, and just try and make that effort, because really like these kids are amazing. And the families are super special. So, and I can speak of that from experience, with the Dungans and Ryan and Nathan, their two sons. So it's just a super special thing, and they're just super special people.
Okay. Well, the show notes will have the links, and so they're mostly active in the San Diego area and also in the Bay Area, because Dana, the sponsors from the Bay Area, so they've got mentoring and those opportunities there. So we'll have all the links in there for people who would like to donate and or potentially volunteer. And really one of those things is maybe just kind of set aside any stereotypes you have and get outside your own comfort zone a little bit and reach out a little bit. And even in the COVID time, they've got a lot of different activities that are available by Zoom and or digital. So they're doing a great job with all those kind of things. So I guess, you know, we'd like to close in this holiday season. You know, as your season is wrapping up, we got 2 weeks left of the NFL season, and then we've got Christmas obviously here in a couple of days, and the new year. What are some things, you know, and it can be connected to the autism tree folks or not, but like, what are things right now that give you hope?
That give me hope.
Yeah, you know, hope, you know, holidays, hope.
Give me hope for the holidays.
Something.
Oh,
So
I
for
mean,
example, DJ Jones said like what gives him hope is the fact that we're talking about issues and we have the podcast as a platform, and like the NFL gives us a platform to speak on the issues that we care about. So that was something that he said gives him hope. So just an example, but whatever you
yeah.
like, I see you every day on that.
I mean, yeah, what gives me hope is just like, you know, trying to make the most of these times we're in, and yeah, like doing stuff like this, you know, adapting, honestly, like having to adapt, like we can't do a lot of stuff in person. So you've been having to sort of adapt and like maybe do some holidays, like we did Thanksgiving like over Zoom, with our families. You know, so just humanity, like adapting, that's kind of like what we've always had to do. So I mean, it's been pretty cool to talk to like some buddies and stuff over Zoom, or over FaceTime, that you haven't talked to in a while. And then just like being around the guys, honestly, that gives me hope, like being around the team. Because like we said earlier, like it's not the season that we all wanted. And it's crazy times, but like everyone's still themselves. Everyone, you know, isn't just being mad or having like terrible vibes. Everyone is still just, you know, like I said earlier, just working super hard, and giving it everything they have. So that's something that gives me hope for life and for the next few seasons or the next year. Like we'll see what happens. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Joey, I love that, man. You are a vibe, Dwell.
Well, I guess I would wrap up for my thoughts on the comment earlier you made about some of the lessons from this year is about don't take things for granted. And, you know, I know you were kind of talking about last year and how great it was and the team was, you know, healthy and, you know, all that and getting to the Super Bowl. But in reality too, I mean, it's all the things, because there's a lot of folks during this time have had it really, really difficult. And we're super aware of that situation kind of internationally even. So it's not taking things for granted, just your health and your physicality and the opportunity that you guys have to be part of the Niners and to play this great game and to be at the professional level. And so there's so much in that to not take for granted and to be appreciative of, especially this time of year, and then do the things we can to try to give back. So just always kind of I'd like to call it joyful gratitude, you know, so.
I like that. That's awesome.
All right, Georgie, anything else?
Peanut butter Dwelley time. Let's ride, my guy.
Rasta boss. You told me a while ago that you had new shirts coming out. I don't know if any of you guys have seen me. I rock a Rasta Boss shirt from time to time.
I heard that rumor as well.
I practice in it all the time. I don't have a new shirt. It's been over a month. So
Right, Danielle, what's up,
Danielle, I don't know if you can hear us,
What's
but
up, girl?
let's go.
Yeah, Danielle, they're asking questions about the shirts. We ran into some production issues, but they will be coming out.
Yeah.
You just threw her under the bus or what, man?
Yeah, I love it.
No, like production issues, like actually like with the company that makes the shirts. So, but they will be out and we are working through them.
All right, you just wait for the new year, kind of really spring them on the world, because then everybody will be like in the mood.
Right. New year, new shirts. Let's do it.
Dwelley. Okay. Well, we can't wait to get ours. We do wear shirts from our sponsors. So plug for our water boys again. If you haven't seen, follow Ben Garland. He just posted some stuff. They're having a December kind of $20, and I can't remember exactly, but you can provide water for like 100 people or something. Anyway, it's on the Water Boys website. We posted all that before, but Ben's got it on his Instagram. It's a great project right now. They got matching funds, but there's a lot of great projects that we've sponsored all year long. So if you're in the mood for giving, I'll just give a plug, check them out, and feel generous this time of year, because certainly there are a lot of people in need.
Definitely.
So
Ross, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
man.
Ross.
You brighten
Appreciate you guys.
All right,
Thanks
bye.
for having me on.
I can't wait.
George,
to
I'll see you tomorrow.
That's great, baby.
I'm glad you gave up football.
Oh my man.
Oh, dude. Me too.
Okay, this week our charity focus is the Autism Tree Project Foundation, ATPF, out of the San Diego and San Francisco Bay Area. And we have joining us their volunteer executive director and co-founder, Dana Hoff, along with her son, Garrett, who serves as director of ATPF's intern and young volunteer program. So welcome to Dana and Garrett. We're so excited to talk to you guys and have you on our show.
Thank you guys. We're excited to be here.
And also, Hidden Pearls podcast listeners, what we were just discussing in the show, or in our little pre-call, was that this is our first like parent-child, not that we're children anymore, Garrett, but but parent, like, you know, like family to family interview like this. So this is very, this is great. I love this type of stuff. So
I'm so happy you figured that out.
Yeah,
In my heart explode.
We're definitely honored to be the first.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Dana, let's start with you. So since 2003, Dana has transformed the autism community in San Diego and the Bay Area through her role as co-founder and volunteer executive director of the Autism Tree Project Foundation, ATPF. ATPF, which Dana founded with her husband, Todd, when their son Garrett was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, is the only autism foundation in the region that focuses on combining all three areas of research, early intervention, and programming. ATPF provides more than 20 free programs and services to the community and has invested more than 3.2 million, let me say that again, 3.2 million back into the community under Dana's leadership. Dana is a passionate, driven, and innovative leader and a key contributor to expanding neurodiversity on a global scale. Dana has been married to her husband, Todd, for 24 glorious years, and together they are proud parents of a George Washington Sr. who just completed his finals. My guy, congratulations.
All right. Speaking of George Washington, all right, finals. Okay, Garrett Hoff. Garrett is the son of Todd and Dana, which we just explained. Welcome. Together they founded ATPF. And again, we talked about the diagnosis. And currently, and I know you've been involved and we'll get back into that, director of ATPF's intern and young volunteer program. So we're going to dive into that. Throughout your life, Garrett has played a vital role in growing ATPF into the incredible organization it is today, providing more than 20 free programs to children and families impacted by autism in the San Diego and the Bay Area. And I think it's more than 20. I went to the website and I opened up programming listings and it covers the whole page. So we won't get to all of them, which is kind of too bad because I know there's a lot there, but we'll have all the links on the show, but lots of stuff going on. Garrett has been a dedicated ATPF volunteer and has wholeheartedly devoted himself to giving back to the organization, their children, and the families. Through his vision to elevate ATPF as one of San Diego's premier service organization, Garrett has raised more than $60,000 to support their program and services. In 2014, he created and developed the ATPF Intern and Young Volunteer Program, which now has more than 150 interns and more than 1,000 volunteers. And we just said he's at George Washington. He's going to graduate in the spring. What's your degree going to be in?
political communication, and thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
All right, that's pretty exciting. Okay, well, thank you for being here. All right, well, just a little blurb on ATFP, and we'll get rolling.
So ATPF was created as a way to help build community awareness for autism. Our goal is to give children on the autism spectrum a voice as we seek to build community compassion towards the parents and families of these special children. ATPF helps thousands of families with autism create a roadmap for their child with autism and navigate a very complex system of care required for their children with autism spectrum disorder. So let's get into the interview. Okay, so this all started back in 2003 when Garrett was diagnosed. Dana, can you please tell us what you and your husband Todd went through as he was diagnosed and the struggles and barriers you faced in trying to figure these things out?
Yeah, so that was 16 years ago. And my husband was the CEO of a small hospital in San Diego. He had obviously a lot of access to healthcare. I worked for Johnson & Johnson. I covered 200 hospitals in Southern California. We both were really, blessed that we were in the healthcare setting and we had so much access to healthcare. Yet, honestly, it didn't make any difference in the struggle that we had to figure out what was going on with our only child, who was a toddler. And we spent 9 months. It was unimaginable, and there's another way that I could sort of exaggerate that it almost broke us in our marriage, financially, spiritually. It's kind of just, it was just everything. And also maybe even more incomprehensible because, we had our MBAs, we thought we can figure things out. And so we had exhausted the healthcare system in San Diego. We have one Rady Children's Hospital, and just the waiting lists and the time to get in and figure things out were really, really long. Even then, even knowing people that we could call and say, hey, we had a lot of healthcare people in our neighborhood. We literally knocked on doors sometimes and went that aspect. It was that level of, I like to think that I understand Amber Alert from what I experienced during those times. It was like, the more people told me something wasn't wrong, the more I knew something was wrong. It was like that. It was like pretty soon, by the time the 9 months period came around, it was like a full-blown Amber Alert that I have been living with as a mom. I knew something wasn't right. So by the time that we finally had a diagnosis from a doctor we knew, and what's really crazy is that Dr. Tronner was one of my top doctors that I was responsible for. I sold a seizure drug. So I was calling on neurologists. I never ever heard in all of those neurologists in Southern California at 200 hospitals, the word autism. And I even was doing preceptorships and working with them. I did not hear that word. So I had actually heard of PDD-NOS, which stands for Pervasive Developmental Delay Not Otherwise Specified. One of my top doctor, who's the chief of pediatric neurology, Dr. Doris Tronner, who helped me start Autism Tree, had asked me when I worked with her in a work setting selling a seizure drug, would I help her with these kids that had PDD-NOS? And I said, sure, what does that mean? And mind you, I had a toddler at home who wasn't sleeping much. And she said, PDD-NOS means what I just told you, pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified. No idea that that was part of the autism spectrum whatsoever. I just said, sure, I'd love to help you with those patients. And then, a year into working with her, I finally asked her if she would see my child. And it was like going into beyond comprehension that she diagnosed my son with PDD-NOS. And I knew 100% that I didn't know what that was because I thought it meant children that were mentally delayed. Garrett was super smart. That was never, ever an issue. He academically has never had any challenges. It's all been social and communication. At that time, he talked, he just echoed everything. He had 100% echolalia. So he could not have any spontaneous language. So if you asked him, Bruce, and you said, hi, what's your name? He would look at you, this really cute little 2-year-old and say, hi, what's your name? And you wouldn't think anything of that. But that he, so it was absolutely united that me and my husband both, when we finally were told our son had autism, we actually sighed relief because we had been also side by side on a seizure track. When he was really little, he was having seizures. We were really thankful when we got through that and we said, okay, we can handle autism, even though we were scared. We didn't know what it meant. And at the same time, we both 100% were not just looking at our own child, but completely like, what are all these other families going to do? How are they going to handle this? I mean, it's taken everything we got, and we're still standing. Like we had so much empathy and love and compassion for the next family. And that's what started happening every single day when I was with Garrett trying to help my son. I would instantly meet another mom and find out about them and then share whatever little bit I knew, anything, everything. And so my husband was really supportive and just said, we have to help the other families. We never, ever, 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 and we still don't, we haven't lost any of our passion. If anything, we've gained it, because we always thought less families would get diagnosed if we put all of our talent and energy and everything into it. We thought, okay, there's going to be less of this happening. And unfortunately, it's, the statistics have only grown year over year over year over year. And it's a tidal wave of families that we're handling with the small staff we have. We can't ever imagine that it's going to get busier, but it always, always, always does. And that's what I want to say, is that our heart has never changed. And I love that Garrett has such a heart connection to the Autism Tree Project Foundation. Is actually a family. It really is. It's a family, and it's not just families with autism. It's families like Ross, who he loves that family. And it's so organic, these programs that we do. This is such a beautiful tribute to how the Foundation Autism Tree Project works. It's actually one huge family we're meeting because of Ross's heartbeat for a family that he's mentored. And that's really the heartbeat right there.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Great story.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
It's crazy. So you were working in that setting for a year, you said, before you figured.
Yeah, it took absolutely like 9, just all out trying to figure out what was going on. And then, because we went literally to UCLA and UCI, I knew, I had doctors and I didn't cover UCLA, and they referred me, and all the way back to San Diego to Dr. Troner. So, we tried. One of the things that made it complicated is because every child's so different, and you're talking about a child's brain.
Yeah.
And so a lot of children don't just have autism, they also have other things going on. When Garrett was little, 40% of children with autism have seizure disorders. Garrett doesn't have a seizure disorder, but when he was little, we were experiencing some of that.
Yeah, just to quickly go off that. So we have this neuroscience conference every year, and we had a panel of individuals on the spectrum. And one of my fellow panelists, when asked, and we'll get to this question a little bit later, would you take a pill that would solve your autism, so to speak, if that is a thing? But his response back was, well, does it solve my OCD, my depression, all the other things I have? Because autism is such a multifaceted, complicated affliction, there's just so many different dimensions and interplays within it.
Well, so I feel like the next lead-in question is, what is autism? For anybody who doesn't exactly understand it. So what falls under the autism spectrum? And then maybe how does autism impact an individual in daily life, and then also a family?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, autism is it's very wide ranging. So what it looks like in me will look very different for somebody else, will look very different for the family that with their son with autism or child with autism. And so really the kind of the core things that really stand out that, within this giant spectrum, which can range from individuals like myself who, can talk, can be mainstreamed into education, can get a job and work, and live, fulfilling, normal, productive lives. Not to say that not all individuals don't. To individuals that, may not be verbal, may live in a group home, may not have a lot of those independent capacities. What unites this entire spectrum are a few things. One is sensory. So a lot of individuals on the spectrum may get overwhelmed by loud sounds, particularly vibrant colors. Touch is a big one. Taste, a lot of gastrointestinal issues. Normally, at least one of your 5 senses is affected in some way, where a sensation can be overwhelming. And so a lot of times how this ends up manifesting is, let's say you're in a public place and it's super noisy and you're sensitive to sound. You get overwhelmed, you have a meltdown, and that's unfortunately a relatively common thing. The other one is issues with connecting socially. This one I've definitely had a lot of experience with. A lot of people on the spectrum have issues with making eye contact. Zoom helps. I can, just look at the camera. But a lot of times, let's say I was talking to mom, I might not be looking right there. I'll be looking over here or over there. And so that's one piece of it. And reading social cues. So, let's say, for example, somebody says, I'm fine, right? And they're not actually fine. An autistic person, they might not necessarily notice the body language and the cues that say, I'm not fine. They'll just hear the words, I'm fine, and be like, okay, they're fine. And so those are at least a few of the things, but there's a lot of different things that kind of go into autism. And so as a consequence, it's a very wide-ranging thing that really has a lot of people with a lot of different needs. I think as is, every individual in that they're different. In terms of kind of the consequences, so to speak, just in terms of what does that look like in daily life, a lot of times, and unfortunately it ends up kind of affecting the entire family too, because you can't just leave them, so to speak, on their own. Is it ends up being pretty isolating, right? If you're struggling with sound, you're struggling with sensitivity and social cues, a lot of things don't become fun anymore. In a sense, it's as terrible as this sounds, in a lot of ways, how, quarantining and being inside all day is not too dissimilar to how a lot of our families were living before the pandemic, because they felt so isolated. They felt so alone. They didn't feel like they could super go out and enjoy the world, in a sense, because of, all the kind of pressures that would go into a day out. It's not just a day out. It's, okay, I have to deal with, a list of things just to get out, in addition to all the things everybody else faces. And so that's why so many of our programs are so wide ranging and focused on getting our families out into the world.
Yeah. So can I and we'll kind of keep working on that. But when we talk about diagnosis, then, one of the complexities for like a 2 or 3 year old child is that, in the maturation process, there's a lot of variances within that already in personality traits. And then there's so many other potential diagnoses. So with the difficulty, has the difficulty in diagnosing autism, do you think has it evolved over the last 16, 17 years to a point where has the level of sophistication and identification advanced, or are we still?
I want to tell you what I see.
Okay.
What I see is this. First off, autism, as much as it's complicated, because we're talking about individual human beings and brain development and how it plays differently into each individual, it's actually not complicated once you understand what to look for. It's as simple as like my son, we had the luxury of having him diagnosed before 3, which I'm saying that because we've had two families come to us and they're just finding out their child's on the autism spectrum and they're teenagers. So that's, extra heartbreaking. Then we're seeing that. We're getting families to us that are far beyond preschool, which is what we've always strived for. That's why we've screened over 20,000 preschoolers, all on private donations, not state or government funding, is because we believe so much in early intervention. Garrett is right here to show you how much there's a chance. There's no guarantee, but early intervention, everyone would agree that it's the key. And when we're doing early intervention in the screening, we're just trying to have kids as a whole be kindergarten ready. But in that process, every school has had kids get diagnosed with autism, and that is a long process, but we're here to embrace the family, everyone involved with the child who's caring for the child. We're there for them to help guide them, give them resources, and like Garrett was articulating really well, get the families out into the community and experiencing life in a really positive way. Saying that's one thing, doing that's another. And once again, I have to give kudos to Ross, because he is a prime example of someone who got that family out and continues to stay in touch with them even after the program where he started was being a college football player at USD, is where he started doing that, but he still maintains that relationship. That's how significant it is. And so, you know, I just wanted to really, there's something that I started with, and now I'm like probably deviating from your original question, Bruce. What was the first original question that you asked?
Well, I guess, and we don't have to go too far into it. When you were talking about the diagnosis thing, I guess what I was trying to
look for.
You know, so I'm a lawyer and naturally suspicious and not very trusting, you know what I mean? So,
okay,
and I've had my share of issues with medical in litigation. So I'm not not trying to badmouth anybody. I'm just, I'm extremely skeptical. So, you know, here we are in 2020, autism's been around for a while.
Yeah.
So, you know, so and then I think about how many times a child, you know, from birth to just say entering elementary school, right? How many medical contacts there are.
Okay.
And if the family, and then the family's right there. And I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, the family, they know something's going on, right? I mean, you know, they don't know what.
Thank you. Okay, I hear you.
They must be communicating that to these doctors. And so here we are in 2020. And if you're telling me there's an 8 or 9 or 10 or 12-year-old walking in the door and saying, oh yeah, we just got diagnosed. I mean, I'm just like, and I'm not a medical person at all, so I don't know. I'm just like,
first of all, it's not pretty much all the time. It's not the actual child that's going to be the one I'm interfacing with to tell me they have autism. It's the parent finally accepting it. That is 99.9% of the time. The biggest challenge we have is that families will not accept that there's something wrong with their child, let alone autism.
Okay, so does that mean they're kind of actually even hiding it a little bit because they want to avoid the stigma in that? Is that part of the problem?
So I think, let me put it this way. So you're a lawyer, right? And so the thing that makes autism such a hard thing is it's not just as simple as I have a broken elbow. I go to the doctor, I get an x-ray, and then, you know, that's the diagnosis. It's an x-ray. It's an x-ray. Most of the time with autism, it's not just a medical process, it's a legal process, and it's a psychological process all rolled into one. The medical process, yeah, you're gonna have a doctor look at it, but in terms of actually getting a diagnosis, you're probably gonna get it diagnosed by a specialist. You're seeing multiple doctors, multiple providers of care. In terms of a legal diagnosis, you know, having an autism diagnosis has major legal ramifications in terms of, you know, in terms of what services your child needs. You know, you can't get certain services if you don't have an autism diagnosis. Those supports just aren't eligible to you, whether that's insurance, whether that's, you know, the school district. You have to kind of have that diagnosis. And then I think the most underrated part, but also I would say the most important part, is it's psychological too. I would say in my experience, you know, I'm 20, I'm young, but the diagnosis process is one of the just toughest psychological processes on parents, because, right, you have a child and you love that child and you believe that child is perfect. And in order to receive an autism diagnosis, to a certain degree, you are acknowledging, you know, that vision almost gets compromised in a way. It shouldn't get compromised. It kind of does, because you have this vision, and then that vision all of a sudden now looks a lot different than it did before. And that's hard for a lot of people. And so a lot of times, and how you end up with late diagnoses, and with a lot of people not realizing this until years and years later, is because, you know, somebody, the parent, for example, may not necessarily be willing to kind of acknowledge that in a way, and really go full force at this in the way that, you know, if you really, you know, in the way that helping an autistic child kind of needs to happen, in terms of really seeing marked improvement on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. And so I think that it's a very brutal process, from start to finish, and it takes a lot of courage for these parents to go through this, because it is not an easy process from A to Z. And so I really love my mom.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't easy for her, like it wasn't easy for a lot of.
I mean, it takes a lot of advocacy. I mean, it really does. And you got to be paying attention. You got to be involved. You got to be engaged. You got to be willing to fight the fight and kind of keep going back and asking for more answers and doing all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of families that just aren't in a position to be able to do that. And that's really tough, which takes us back to the tree project. So, you know, fortunately, there's some research that, because one of the key things when I was reading up on autism a little bit, like the tips for parents, like the number one was get connected to your community of other autism families to share information and get support.
Yes. I wanted to tell you, I don't remember if we talked about it when we first met you guys a couple weeks ago or last week, but Doug Flutie was a football player for the San Diego Chargers when Garrett was diagnosed. And my pediatrician's office, the office manager's husband, was on security for the San Diego Chargers. And so when Garrett got diagnosed, she said, you need to meet my husband and he can introduce you to Doug Flutie. And so it was this whole thing, but we got this beautiful opportunity. And Doug Flutie and his wife were so kind to talk to me and Todd. And they said, you learn everything from other parents. They're living it 24/7. And then they were very supportive. We said, we want to start a foundation in San Diego. And Doug put us on the map when he supported to do Monday Night Football with Doug Flutie at the Hilton Torrey Pines. That's what got us started. And I really appreciated, I felt like maybe that was just one of the biggest answers to prayer, is for my husband to have Doug be such a solid role model of living out loud, for lack of a better word, to put it, with his family. He always had his whole family together. And I did go to some of Doug's events in over that time, and he looked at his foundation was his son's legacy, Doug Flutie Jr. And I think we always had a heart connection, that we were pure of helping one family at a time. When he came and did Monday Night Football with Doug Flutie, he met every family, and they would show him pictures and tell him about their kids. And he had his timeout band, which was when he was a Charger, and it was such a gift to my husband to see Doug being such a great role model, and you know, having his foundation based out of Boston. And when you look at the stats, I know you were asking me about that, Doug, and I don't know if we got to it, but the CDC's is it affects 1 in every 50 school-age children. That's age 6 to 17. That does not include the preschoolers. And in 16 years, what I'm seeing is more children not getting the early diagnosis, in this pandemic. This COVID-19 is making it 100 times worse. We have families that are just getting diagnosed. They can't even get an IEP because the schools aren't open.
I have a question.
Makes it tough.
I have a question. So thank you, Garrett. Okay, so before we kind of get too far away from this, because I feel like, Dana, what you were starting to say, or whichever one of you wants to tackle this, but like, and I know this is probably a big question, but you were saying it can be really easy if you know what to look for. So is there like a handful of things that just early recognition or things to be really aware of to start paying attention to?
Yes. And that's why we had that checkoff list for autism. I think we sent it to you, and Garrett's wearing Doug Flutie's little jersey on it.
Which will be in our show notes. So if anybody needs.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I see, Emma, is when you have a new little baby and they point and they take in the world with you, that is such a huge indicator, like that the logical system is on track, because children on the autism spectrum, they don't point. Garrett never pointed, and I took him for fun to see at 12 months how he was developing it at this project they were doing in research in San Diego State. I did it for fun. And they would say, the 3-ring binder, open the page, point to the fire truck. He wouldn't do it. I knew 100% he knows what the fire truck is. Turn the page, point to the kitty cat. I mean, every single time they wanted him to point, I would know 100%. I know he knows what it is, but he wouldn't point. And there's just so many things that aren't complicated. Children with autism don't tend to make eye contact. They don't respond to their name. All these things applied to my son when he was little. And I didn't see that checkoff list anywhere until we were like with a PhD, getting the full, where are we on the autism spectrum? Like, why am I not seeing this checkoff list in like every pediatrician's office? That's why we started putting the checkoff list in the pediatrician's office, basically.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Start early and get it figured out. Right? Huh.
For starters, we thought that could help.
Right. You'd think somebody might have thought of that before, but there we go again. So
we didn't experience that.
Okay. Well, good. All right. Where are we at? Let's see. Okay. Well, let's talk about that then. So we got through all this, and you've talked a little bit about this. And so in that experience, and then at some point, because you talked about meeting with Doug, and all I can think of is Flutie Flakes and all the stuff that he's done and all the donations he's made. So he's been quite the inspiration. So kudos to him. Plus, he was a great football player. So anyway, I really appreciate that story. And so at some point, though, you guys had already been kicking this around. And so when you met with Doug, he said, yeah, let's get her going and doing all that. So what was it then? I mean, how far along in there was it? I know there's a year in here about when you started it, but at some point you guys did that. So what was some of the motivations? And then tell us a little bit about how that got going and how things went.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett got diagnosed, honestly, 2 years and 9 months. I remember it was going into Labor Day weekend. And I remember when I was with Garrett when Dr. Troner said it was PDD, NOS, and that was the start of autism. All I wanted to do is go to the zoo. I called my husband. I said, Dr. Troner said Garrett has autism. Can we go to the zoo now? And we have pictures. And we're at the zoo. And Todd's mom was with us and her husband. And that picture just meant so much, because that was like my strongest desire is I just want to do normal things with my child. And that's a driving force at Autism Tree. If you look at all of our programs, we're trying to have these children and their siblings experience normal things, because here I am, a mom, and my child's like almost 3, and I really don't even think we'd been to the zoo. We were so consumed trying to figure out, what was going on. And I just think that was such an incredible moment that my husband's like come straight from the office. He's in a suit, and we're just with our cute little guy, and we're looking at the zebra. Like, it's just, I think that's a really driving thing, is that we want to encourage our families. This situation of getting a diagnosis and navigating the system is no joke. It's very challenging, but we also want to present that you can still have a great life and a normal life. And I love that all the partners that we meet, and just the heart that I feel from you guys right now feels like Autism Tree. It means that it's people that might not have a family direct connection, but you do know people with autism. And that's why our family tree is so much more than just the autism families. It's people that love people that have a child with autism or a family member with autism. And I learned that right away, that everyone around me actually did know people with autism. They just didn't talk about it until I said my son got diagnosed with autism. And then I had a pretty good list to start with.
Right. And so just on that, so the Autism Tree project, the tree does represent, is that really the essence of where the name came from for the organization?
Yeah, I started, so when Garrett was 3, we did a fundraiser. We were trying to raise money for another foundation that was going to open a kindergarten, and it didn't happen. And I said, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. I want to raise money, but I don't know. I gave the money to somebody else, and then it didn't happen. So right away, we started Autism Tree, and then we had met Doug, and then we worked towards doing our first event. And if you see this painting in the back of this camel, Mama, yes, is by Joel Anderson, and he painted on canvas Doug Flutie. And I didn't know what it was going to be like. I just had this office call. We had an artwork. We wanted kids on the autism spectrum to do art, and that was going to be like our auction for Monday Night Football with Doug Flutie. So I get this call, you have to come and see this right now from the speech office. And I said, well, I'll be in later this week with Garrett. I'll see it then. They're like, no, you have to come right now. And it was this beautiful canvas that Joel, who did the llama, had done of Doug Flutie in his Charger gear. And it was unbelievable. And he had this card that said, I'm an artist, and he was like 10, and I love to make people smile. So I took it to Carson to training camp, and I showed it to Doug, and it was just like, that's where it was like, oh yeah, we're doing this. We're doing Monday Night Football. Like, we were doing it, but that was like, it really, Joel brings whatever events we do, he brings the autism more to the forefront. We always love to use his art, and we have put it on every cover of the neuroscience conference. Joel designs it. Joel designs like thank yous we do to our donors every year, and it just means so much. And he's super accomplished in my life. It's one of my biggest blessings in 16 years has been watching him go from not speaking at events to speaking all over and teaching kids how to do art. And just, I think that's what's beautiful, is that because we've been doing this 16 years, you see Garrett is now at college, and he's not alone. There's a whole generation of kids that are now going to college and getting jobs, and we're now on the second generation. And that I never would have imagined that, Emma, starting out. I don't know how old you are, but as a new mom, like you're starting, your brother's getting married, and like your family tree is growing, and to imagine that we're on a second new generation of kids is really quite amazing to me.
Okay, so a couple takeaways so far, and then we'll transition a little bit.
I'm 21. I'm 21. No, I'm just kidding. I'm 30.
So,
You
boy,
look really young. I meant it as a compliment. Like, I remember being young like you.
I'm 17. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, the big 3-0 there. So anyway, so early diagnosis, really pushing for that stuff, right? Stay connected to other families that are going through the same thing. So figure out a way to network. And that's where the tree comes from. And then look for the organizations that are in the field, because there's national organizations, and then locally you guys are around in the Bay and San Diego area, and there's others as well. So kind of stay connected, learn as much as you possibly can about it. And then you got to be an advocate for your kid, right? You got to be there, and that takes support. And then the other big one I read about was just the self-care for parents, because parents, just like you said a little bit, in the effort of kind of the advocacy and the passion in the diagnosis and then doing all that, sometimes parents forget to take care of themselves, because it can be very exhausting and wear them out. And then also we forget just to normalize our own lives with it. So let's go ahead and come home, have a movie night, eat dinner, and let's not worry about it. You know what I mean? Or whatever it may be for that particular family. But like, let's just relax a little bit, try to be normal. Let's just share the love. We are who we are. And each of us, each got our own little quirks anyway. So you got autism and I got my thing, and whatever, we'll all be the family together. So, okay. So let's see, you're the volunteer executive director. I know the volunteer part's on there. So people that donate know that you're not taking home $500,000 a year and banking some cool place in Cabo, right? So we know that.
Yeah.
All right. So all the money goes back into the program, and you've been running that with your passions. And then I just want to throw this out. So I also saw Salvation Army, you were the Women's Auxiliary. They honored you in 2018. The Woman of Dedication at the 53rd Annual Salvation Army Women of Dedication Luncheon. So I don't know, I think that was all based on your work for the community and your outreach around autism. So that's pretty cool. So congratulations on that. And then any other kind of pieces as far as being the executive director? I think you've told us a lot about it, but I don't want to jump onto the next one. And if there's more that you want to say about that.
No, I think, for our family, it's just been, the foundation's been like our second child, but now it's grown up, and, it's much bigger. And we really realized that this pivot that we had to do even before the schools closed, to start doing everything virtually, when most of us, including myself, hadn't ever done a Zoom call.
Right.
It turned out that it's been an incredible blessing. We've had over 500,000 people on our social media channels. We never imagined that before that. And now we can stay connected to so many more families. And a lot of the families are nonverbal, which we've always wanted have the nonverbal families more involved in our foundation, but it's a little more challenging for them. And so now with all of our programs going virtual, we're seeing a lot more activity from those families and interest, and that's a huge blessing. So although this is extraordinarily difficult, I see us still continuing to grow. And then when we aren't having to do virtual and we can go back to doing things live and in person again, I think we'll still continue to stay really strong with wanting to stay online, so to speak, so that we can see everybody from all around the country, that and on a larger percentage of the spectrum also.
Right. You know, I think that's so true, Dana, that the Zoom thing, this whole kind of forced virtual world, you know, on the one side, you know, it's forced us into this virtual world, which maybe, you know, some people thought was going to be a negative, but the other thing, I think, you know, it gives people boundaries and some safety so that, you know, I can zoom into something that I might never have wanted to try. If I had to go down to their building and show up for some kind of orientation or whatever, but I can sit here in my pajamas or whatever, eat dinner and listen to some presentation on it and get a feel for the organization, what their programs are about or whatever, and try something out. And it's so much less threatening for people, I think, in some way. And then once, you know, if we get back into the, you know, face-to-face stuff, then I've already know people. Like I can go down, I can look for Dana, I can look for Garrett and say, hey, I met you guys and I know what you guys are about and I want to see you in person. So I think there is kind of an entry level way that it actually makes some of those transitions actually easier for people. And to me, I mean, not just necessarily, you know, because we did like suicide prevention and people talk a lot about that stigma and being there and being recognized and identified, but by being able to network and communicate with people in a way that it's not quite so like in their face, they've been able to participate. And it's the same thing there. They've had a lot of people participate that had not before. So that's a pretty cool thing. So eventually, hopefully we can do face-to-face stuff again. But yeah, I think the Zoom and the virtual world is here to stay for the way people want to do that. Well, then tell us about, how do you guys get clients? Where do they come from? How do people get connected with you guys?
Yeah, our clients come from all over. I mean, we're serving kids that are as young as 1 year old, and the parent might have they have a knowing, or maybe they've already had one child get diagnosed. We do have a number of families that have more than one child with autism. But we're serving families literally from all over. They hear about us from every imaginable, from the professionals to just being around in the community for 16 years. It's amazing how people will just give out our name when they know someone has autism because we've been around. And, you know, San Diego is a big city, but it operates like a small town. And I feel like that with the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. So the Bay Area is also really tightly connected. And then you see, as with your organization, the football players move all over. So we've had 1,000 of the football players just be mentors to our kids since 2008. So because of all the dynamic partnerships and stuff with Autism Tree, everyone's always going all over. So even though we are based out of California, just the football players alone are all over, you know, and they carry the foundation with them. And that's such a beautiful thing that we're very, very touched and grateful for.
Well, let's see. Let's do this then. Garrett, you've been very patient. I appreciate you jumping in. I do really want to get your story in here too, and then we'll talk a little bit about programs. So you're the one that got all this stuff started, got your mom all worked up and dad, and then they went out and started the organization, and now nothing's ever been the same since. So, you know, pre-call, we were just talking about that. So, you know, maybe just share with us a little bit about, you know, being that 2.5 or 2.9 month or whatever child and being diagnosed. And then, and again, I raised that with you before that. I would just, you know, what was the journey like? And when was there some awareness on your own part about, I keep hearing about this autism and I see my picture on all these things. Like, what does that mean to me? But tell us a little bit about your journey and working with the organization and now being at George Washington.
So I think the strongest word, if I had to sum it all up in 3 words, I'd say trial and error. Just in that, you know, so unlike a lot of individuals on the autism spectrum, I kind of always knew, you know, there's a certain, most children, you know, don't have their face on a fact sheet with the word autism on top of it. And so and I also was a little bit different in that I progressed pretty significantly over time, considering that when I was, first diagnosed, 2 3/4, 3, I was echolalic, nonverbal, and then kind of gained back speech, and then kind of progressed into being a very, very verbal individual. And so, the reason why I say the words trial and error is a lot of, especially when I was in therapy through much of my elementary years and then kind of on my own after that. The big thing was, you'd have to get this behavior down, and you'd try the behavior again and again and again, and there'd be a lot of failure and a lot of mistakes, and a lot of times where it wouldn't work. And then eventually you'd get it, and then you'd move on to the next thing. And that's kind of how it's been for years and years and years. And even still, there's things that I want to get down that I still haven't quite figured out all the pieces to, but I'm going to keep trying until I figure out kind of how to make it all work, and just keep progressing and challenging myself in that way. I think a lot of it too has been, kind of an observation game. I've always been pretty strong academically on the book side, on, observing things, and to the detriment of kind of my social game, so to speak. And so trying to kind of apply where my academic strengths to the social element, trying to observe behavior, see, okay, how does this fit in here? How does that fit? I think in terms of what my experience is like as an autistic person today, it's a lot, and I'm on the pretty moderate end of the spectrum at this point. A lot of people, if I don't tell them I'm on the spectrum, they wouldn't know. It's, figuring out, okay, is what I'm doing working within this social context? And is this something or if something goes wrong, is that just because I'm autistic, or is that something that happens to everybody? A lot of times I think that almost doubt kind of is the biggest thing that I almost experience to a certain point, as odd as that sounds.
No, it
I
doesn't.
don't think that sounds odd at all.
I'm just thinking back to junior high and me getting like 10 no's in a row at a junior high dance. And I finally figured out, I don't think I'm going back to the dance. You know what I mean? Because it was just too painful to live. But I could see, like, if I knew I was diagnosed, I might all of a sudden say, it said, well, maybe I'd felt better if I'd had something to blame it on. I don't know. But I'm just, you know what I mean? That I could see that it's I don't want to say a cloud, like it's a bad thing necessarily, but just kind of, it's always there, like a backpack you're carrying around. And if those things start to happen to you in a social setting that feels like less than successful, all of a sudden you start putting it on that, and then that thing can get pretty heavy. So yeah, no, that seems to make a lot of sense that way.
But also, I want to say, what an incredible lesson or story, I guess, and you're still living it, obviously, but of perseverance and self-discovery. And, a lot of the yoga and meditation and spiritual work that we now do, and that is such a huge part of our lives, is just that. And it's trial and error, and it's what is working for me right now and how do I feel, and really learning how to connect. Like, it is scary when you start taking your own treatment and you start taking your own emotions and how you're feeling into your own hands, and you take like full responsibility for it. And like, to go from, because obviously your doctors are going to tell you things, and your mom's going to tell you things, and your family, like, people are going to tell you what to do. But at the end of the day, you have to sit there and think, like, how am I feeling? Like, what am I doing? And it's on you to kind of have that self-awareness. So that's amazing. And I think really, if you hadn't have told us, I don't think I would have ever put that together, that you are living with autism. So incredible. But I want to know, so as you have been growing and living and learning and trial and error, we all go through that. What are some of the hardest things you've had to face? And then what are some of the gifts that autism has given you, that you've learned?
Mm-hmm. I think I'll start with the gifts, because I think it's more powerful, and that's what I felt more from my experiences. I think the gifts is the perspective the self-awareness. You don't know quite what other people are doing, but you can try to really pay attention and observe. And I really learned from a pretty young age, and it's still something that I am far from perfect on. But you learn pretty quickly, okay, this doesn't quite come naturally in the same way that it comes naturally to everybody else. But if I'm diligent about it, if I put in the work, if I pay attention, then I can, make up a lot of the gaps and even, out socialize in some capacities, and perform in the way that, society kind of dictates to a certain degree. And so I think in terms of that, it's just the perspective of it. I don't think if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through, if our family hadn't gone through what we'd gone through, I don't think we'd have nearly the perspective that we have, and what we've seen, and understanding just how meaningful it is to be where we are, and how rare it is, and how easily things could have gone wrong or ended up in so many different places. And so I think that understanding is the biggest gift. In terms of the challenges, I think the thing that's been interesting is, and you can say different, Mom, but really a lot of the really challenging years were the early years. And there are years that I'll fully admit, a lot of it I do remember, but a lot of it I kind of tried to block just because, it's not really quite fair to hold my past self to the standards of today. And two, it was a long time ago. And so, I try to kind of stay focused on the present, stay focused on the future. I have a lot I want to do. And the foundation has a lot to do and wants to do. And so, coming back to what that challenge kind of is today, it's more, really just trying to deal with the current trials and errors, so to speak, in front of me. And just trying to figure out when I have when something doesn't quite go right, okay, is this something that I can fix? And if so, how? And just how do I make sure that I appreciate what's going on? And sometimes it's easier to do that. Sometimes it's not as easy to do that, as you guys know. It's just, really just trying to not get to lose the ability to have logic and judgment in those situations, and getting outside of yourself and thinking, okay, how does the other person feel? How do you think the other person feels about the situation? And how do I resolve this in the right way?
It's fully unimaginable to me, like, to hear him say that, because that's like one of the hardest things for someone with autism that sometimes just could never happen, is perspective taking. It's so hard.
Right.
It's hard for typical people, but for someone with autism, especially when they're younger, early intervention, like I could say 100 times over, Garrett worked really, really hard, and lots of kids have, and Garrett knows that they haven't had the same outcome. So we know how blessed we are, and I do have a strong faith, and my parents, when they were alive, had a very strong faith and prayed all the time about it, but also put the work in. And I think it's just an incredible testament that what I've been saying more than ever to everybody that comes in weekly, we do a lunch and learn, which I would love to have you on, Emma. When you were talking, I'm like, yes, I hear what you're saying, and I'm so open to it. When I say open, for everybody, and especially because everybody's struggling so much right now, and we need new doors to open. But what I say, like, honestly, every week, from all of me to everybody on the weekly call during the COVID-19 has been, we have 724 trillion cells in our body. It's fully incredible. Each person, we all have this unbelievable, uncomprehendable capacity. And sometimes, I know my husband only read like Garrett's autism spectrum, where he was on the spectrum one time, and then he let it go. And that's what we did a lot, is we got the knowledge, but we didn't let it be the end game, right? And we work really hard and we try to find the best. And that's one thing running the foundation. Every call for 8 years, the first 1,000 calls was like listening to the parent and respecting where they are and what they're going through, and then going, okay, what are your top 3? What do you want to work on that's going to change your dynamic so it's not so stressful every day? The child won't eat, the child won't sleep. What one do you want to tackle? And then who's the best? And always telling the parent, please do not spend your money and your time and your heart on something that's not going to work or doesn't make sense for your child. There's no cookie cutter solution. There's all this amazing resources, which is a gift, but how do we figure out the right resource for each child? That's what's really important. And I think that you guys do a tremendous job in the times that I've been listening to you when we've been together, is just about the individuality and charting what you were saying, Emma. Completely agree. And I think one of the hardest things with autism in a general sense is that it's so literal. People with autism are so literal. So if you ever try to live your life really literal, on a good day, it's hard. Now it's like, because if you take everything coming at you during COVID literally, how could you not be completely losing your mind?
There's a lot of folks losing their mind anyway, so
exactly
about that piece.
Exactly.
Well, Garrett, I just summarize a little point that you made. So, the one of the things I'm hearing in that, so we're really big on meditation and mindfulness. I mean, those are kind of the core principles of the other work that we do. And you're right that that's a really difficult thing for a lot of people. The notion about I'm having some form of stimulus, or something's happening, and then to be able to take enough and be self-aware enough about your thoughts and your feelings about what is going on, and then try to be intentional about the way in which you choose to respond. That whole process, because people just tend to, something happens and boom, we react, which, and I think in the autistic world, that's a real natural occurrence, because the pause, the ability to take that pause seems to be minimized, or that part is more difficult, at least if I'm understanding it correctly. So that ability that you've been working on in that way is really something that, because I think, a lot of people really struggle. Is there a mindfulness type of practice that you've actually engaged in, or meditation work, or is it just kind of being, you need to work on it, and so it's kind of a, kind of step-by-step thing that you just work on?
Yeah, I would say it's more the latter of, I don't really quite attach mindfulness and those types of things to it. I see it as almost, I used to play football and kind of like a rise and grind type of thing. Like, yeah, this is not going to be the easiest thing, but you just have to kind of get up, keep going, keep doing it, and know that it isn't quite going to work most of the time. That being said, I have done a lot of mindfulness related things. I used to teach yoga. And so that those types of things, I think, subtly have influenced it over the years, and quite what that's looked like, but I've never really fully thought about it in that way. Though it's an interesting point that you bring up.
I'm just going to throw this out there. I feel like you are probably more mindful than a lot of people that I talk to. So, I feel like you have like a fountain of wisdom that the world needs to hear. Both of you, because obviously, Dana, your influence, has gotten where your family is today. So I think, I would say you're pretty mindful.
Emma, I just love seeing you and your dad together. There's no way to exaggerate it. And, Bruce, I don't know how it is for you as a father, but for me and, for my husband, it was really, really humbling, just to think. I started, one of my biggest lessons I learned as a mom going through everything with G is, we call him Garrett G, so if that's okay.
We call George G.
Oh,
we have a G too.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. It's just that I realized when Garrett was little and we were going through therapy all day, every day, 7 days a week, we were doing 40 hours a week. That seems like I'm lying, but I'm not. I just realized that I had to honestly look in the mirror, and when he was having a really bad day, an extra bad day, and like crying and tantruming, I had to do a check in the mirror and go, well, look at yourself. You're a basket case. You need to pull it together. I would say this to myself, like, okay, the good day is now going to depend on how much I prepare. So if I can prepare my child and give the sequencing, like, okay, next we're going to see Bruce and his daughter Emma's going to be there and show a photo, dramatic difference than to just boom, show up, rushing, maybe we haven't eaten, you know, and just really starting to really work on being together as a parent, where I could look in the mirror. And that was a really big thing for me, is to go, you know, I need to be able to look in the mirror at my child right now at 20 and go, without any hesitation, I would dream of this when he was 3. I want to know that he could look at me and go, why didn't you fight harder for me? Why didn't you pull yourself together more for me? Why didn't you advocate more for me? I would hear it all the time. Like, I almost, for the first few years, didn't feel my feet on the ground. I was trying to be a superhero mom. Like, I want to save my kid, you know? Well, what I learned most important is to really get myself together. And if he's out of control, look at myself first, you know? And I think, I don't know if you ever experienced that as a parent, but being able to manage finding the right therapy for Garrett and then do it with him every day for a lot of years, it was really hard. But that's the thing I always came back to. And I loved it, because my husband would call me the chief Garrett officer. And then I stopped my career and I just did autism training. You know what? It meant a lot to me to be called the chief Garrett officer. I was like, I am the chief Garrett officer. And then all the decisions, it's like, I'll take the doctor's input, but he's my kid. And
Well,
I'll decide if it's right for him.
yeah, you know, which just to me speaks, you know, I don't want to keep going around the same tree, but but it almost speaks like a mindfulness practice for the parent as both a self-care. And then when you're talking about kind of like, because the more organized, consistent, and routine I can be, then I'm in a better position to create that environment for my child, which again, if I'm understanding, you know, in autism, that's typically, those are things that are valued, about being able to predict what's going on, to educate, to keep routines steady, those kind of things, eliminate surprises. And the more I can do that in my own personal life, then I can create that for others. So maybe there's a dialogue we have to have after this to talk about bringing some kind of meditation and mindfulness practice into the realm, both for parents and potentially for those diagnosed, and just to see how that might be impacting folks. So
wait, I want to tag on to this, because we have, obviously, our listeners, they may have experienced autism, they may have absolutely none. But I think what we're saying right now, if you're picking it up, is that having a routine can be insanely healthy for your nervous system and grounding and your overall mood and generally what's going on in your life. And so a lot of times when we feel out of control, this happens to me on a regular, like yesterday, something really weird happened, like just weird energy, which also was about Age of Aquarius type stuff. Maybe that's for a later podcast, but just with like anyway, planets. But something really weird happened. And all of a sudden I felt like so thrown out of control that I had like never really experienced that sensation before. And I always talk about this on the show, but you have your tools and you have your practices that when something triggers you, you have, like, for me, I do like deep breathing, I do legs up the wall, and I have like an exact yoga sequence that like grounds me down and puts me in a really healthy place. And so I just want to emphasize that the executive director and somebody very, very experienced in living with autism is preaching about how healthy and stabilizing it can be to have mindfulness practices, whether you want to call it that or not, or living in a routine. So if you're feeling out of control, like Dana was saying, maybe look in the mirror and be aware of what you're doing to yourself and then to the community around you, because a lot of the time we can really affect those around us by the way that we take care of ourselves and show up for other people.
that's like one of those, it's like a commercial plug
Listen,
on a podcast, isn't
people.
it? They take a break and they go to their
Listen.
sponsor. Our sponsor this week is mindfulness. So, okay, I'm going to read a couple things.
Sometimes you just got to hit them over the head with it a little bit. So.
Okay, so we're going a little longer than we thought. So I want to do this. I'm going to talk us out a couple things that I read on the website. And then I know, and we don't have to, so with all the programs you guys do, we really don't have time to go into a bunch of them. I know the internship project, if you want to talk about that, and then Dana, if there's anything else, but I just wanted, so here's a couple of things the mission talks about. raising community awareness and compassion for autism. So that's kind of education and understanding, giving voice to children and families working with an autism diagnosis. So if you're in the spectrum, helping people be advocates for themselves, helping people understand, and then helping people develop a roadmap for navigating all the different things that we've been talking about, because that's ongoing. Okay, then you also talk about, you're one of the few autism organizations, at least out on the West Coast in the area, that deals with all three areas: research, early intervention, and programming. So we've talked a lot about early intervention and programming. I don't know if you want to add some research stuff or not. I know there's a bunch out there, so we'll do that. But the two programs that were really relevant on the website, if you want to get to them, but if you want to divert, do that. Ignite Every Child, which I believe is the kind of preschool, pre-diagnosis type thing. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that, that'd be great. And then Garrett, if you want to, I know you've been really involved in creating the intern and young volunteer program. If you want to say a little bit more about that too, just so we get a little bit of feel for some of those programs. And if you want to go in a completely different direction, that's certainly good too.
No, that's great. I think I can tie everything in. There's a lot there, but okay. So first of all, one kind of slogan that we use is CARE, community, advocacy, research, education. And really what that is because when we talk about what are the issues that the autism community is facing, a lot of times it's that there's so many different institutions out there. It feels like you against the world a lot of times, where you're dealing with, the school district, the healthcare company, 20 different things. And there's not, necessarily somebody there to help you through that process. And that's really what our mission is to help our families feel a part of the community, not just the autism community, not just the San Diego community, but the world, and feel supported, because it's a very valuable thing. Then tying that into our research. So a lot of our research, we have a clinical advisory board. They're great. A lot of times, researchers, the people that are doing the research and putting out, studies that have a huge impact on how autism gets talked about, how it gets shaped. Don't meet with kids, don't meet with parents. And so we've been really lucky for the past few years to work with the chair of our neuroscience conference, Dr. Allison Motri, who has a son with special needs, Yvonne. He's a great guy. And, put together a neuroscience conference with the best and brightest from San Diego and beyond on autism issues and neurodiversity as a whole, and allowing them to, take questions from the community. Most of the time, when we have the neuroscience conference, which we've been doing for a few years now, parents are the ones who ask most of the questions. Our, autism parents, they care so much, and they're very intellectually curious. And so we've had a lot of great exchanges with the research community, and we view our neuroscience conference as an important connection and dialogue with the community that's putting out all of this research that hopefully will create brighter futures for our families. Then tying it in, we've talked about early intervention. It's one of the key research components that's come out. And with early intervention, it's, this idea of you learn the most when you're young, right? You're 3 years old, you're learning all these different things. And then over time, your capacity to learn things isn't quite as expansive as before, slowly, little by little. And so that's really when you can do most of the types of behavioral interventions that are out there tend to be most effective at a younger age. They were for me. Most of the really, really intense stuff, the 40 hours a week when I was younger, and then gradually less and less and less over time. And so the idea of Ignite Every Child is that a lot of families aren't getting these resources at a young age, at 2, at 3. A doctor may say, oh, we're not sure, come back when they're 5, come back when they're 7. But by the time you're 5 or 7, you've missed a few years that you could have been doing and putting in the time and putting in the work and doing it in a really focusing on helping and learning in a really targeted way, and that gets lost. And so I think that's a really, really key aspect of it. And so I used to work for the National Head Start Association. And so the Head Start community, Head Start is the preschools for low income families funded by the federal government. And they help a lot of families all over the country. And so we've worked really closely with the Head Start preschools here in San Diego to screen their kids every year, so that those families are getting the resources at 3 or 4, and so they don't fall through the cracks and then find out at 10, 12, 15, who knows when. Then finally, the internship program. I just want to try to.
You're doing great.
I'm impressed.
This is really good.
This is great.
I stacked that question really bad, so you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. So it's actually interesting with that. So I've been very active in politics. I've tried to intern a lot because I think professional experience is a really important thing. And so one of my first internships was this state senator here in San Diego, and he had a huge internship program. We're talking 150 interns at the time, and those interns basically ran his office. They were it allowed him to do so much more than he could have been able to do otherwise with the limited staff that he had as a state senator. And so I realized, okay, wait a second. I have a 20 hours a year community service requirement with my school. All of my classmates have this requirement too. If we can create an internship program where people can go get the credit for being an intern, do 20 hours or more, and put in the time, it'll help us run our programs in a manner that won't stretch what limited resources we have. And so so all I did was put together an application and a web page. And I've been astounded by the response of it. We've had interns from Germany, France, Mexico, Brazil. We've had interns from Princeton, Claremont McKenna, all the way down to middle school. We've had interns from almost every background by this point. It's been such a diverse group. And even in COVID, even in this virtual time, we still have our interns are still essential. They're helping run our social media. They've been a force multiplier. And I think it's a real testament to that, you can make an impact from a very young age. I founded the intern program at 14. We've had interns as young as 12, put in time, help run events, help run programs, spend time with families, and learn about this. And we've had great academic partnerships too. We work with San Diego State. We get an intern from San Diego State that has a class requirement for early childhood, and they come and they take on a leadership role semester after semester after semester. So it's been remarkable how that's all really kind of come together. And it was really nice because last year, when I was back in town for the summer, I had the chance to revamp our application a little bit more just to appeal to more college-aged interns because I wrote the original application process when I was 14.
You were 13.
13.
When he worked for the senator, you
Right.
interviewed on his.
And so I updated that a little bit more to reflect some of the other experiences I've had interning in DC and in politics and what those expectations look like a little bit more. But it's been remarkable to see ATPF grow. I always like to think of it as that I've grown with the foundation. We've tried to serve more families, have more programs, and do more in the same time that I've been trying to expand and do more in the same way. And it's been a real privilege to get to be a part of that. I've been very lucky in that. And kind of going back to your earlier question about what does the gifts of autism. I would say one of the gifts is getting to kind of grow up alongside ATPF and be a part of this community. And when we were in person, we'd have monthly meetings where we'd invite all our volunteers and interns in and have pizza and go over all the stuff we've done and all the stuff that's coming up. And get kind of almost like a second family. ATPF, I think, has always been a very tight-knit community. We really try to love and support and protect our families to a certain extent. And getting to be at the heart of that has been a real gift, and something that I really enjoyed looking back on my, years in secondary education.
Well,
When he says that, I'm like, okay, I didn't make a mistake doing this,
no, it's all good. Yeah. And
we didn't put his picture on the poster, the doctors did, and me and Todd were like, oh God, do we want that picture on there? And then other kids would see it and go, Garrett, we want to be on a picture like you are at the doctor's office. But, I think that what helped me as an executive director, since my background sales and marketing is I was just following my son Garrett's lead, but open to try and help each next parent. And in doing so, I have a lot of joy with this internship program Garrett started. We simply couldn't run the foundation the way that we do without the manpower. And we have an email that goes out once a week to all the volunteers, and it'll say a minimum, even right now during COVID, of like 20 to 30 things coming up and how many people we need to help make it happen, even virtually. And what I love is being able to follow these young interns' interests. I can't do that with all of them. And we have Rebecca Barron, who's doing a really phenomenal job. She treats those interns like her own kiddos. And I think it's great because when you follow their interests, that's why I really enjoyed having middle schoolers come to our office and let them do what they want. And they just blow my mind with their ideas of things they wanted to do and start. And people have said over the years, and it's embarrassed me when we're doing a big event and someone's on video saying, yeah, the executive director is really cool. She's not like, and names all these other organizations. I just give her an idea and she goes, yeah, that's great. That's cool. And I'm like, oh. But it is kind of true. As long as there's a strong parent right there and someone wants to do something and I believe it's a good idea. And honestly, in 16 years, I can't say, thank God, that we've ever had something really not work out. And I think it's because the intention and the love and the integrity is in place. And, I see that right there with you, Bruce and Emma. You have such integrity. I can see it. I can feel it. And that's the essence that we drive at every day. It's not, as much as the workload is hard and the big picture is hard of what we're trying to do, every day it's really down to what has to happen today, and that all revolves around actual children and families. So that makes it like, okay, we're do it. It's not hard because we want to do it.
Well, love, intention, and integrity, that'll take us a long way. So, well, let me let's talk about kind of other responses, because you guys are doing a lot. So is there anything else? So if people are interested and they go, wow, this is amazing. So both kind of with your organization, with the Autism Tree Project, as well as kind of on a bigger scale, are there things that you would, encourage people to do, if they're not already involved in the autism community? What would you encourage folks to take off on?
I mean, I think Garrett did a really great job. We welcome people to volunteer at any age. I mean, we start as young as like 12 years old, middle school. We have so many different groups of teenagers now that volunteer from lots of different organizations. National Charity League is a national group, and we have over 400 little girls and moms with autism that are paired up and supported since 2009 by one chapter here, the Del Sol chapter of National Charity League. We can't say enough about how much we love people with a heart to volunteer. And a lot of times what we have them do is go to our calendar of over 200 events. Even this year in COVID, there'll be over 200 events on our calendar. We put everything we do every day on our social media, including being on this podcast with you guys. We're so excited to have that up, to let people know what you guys are doing too. And to thank Ross Dwelley and to say he's a shining example of being a mentor to our families far beyond the college years when we met. And just to say, one of the greatest blessings we get is when parents tell us how much, like specifically like with the football program, the parents love that their football player, they're watching their son play football, but they might have just as much joy watching them play after the game with one of our kiddos and their siblings. And that's really special to see all that happen, and all the change that takes place is so real. A lot of our fathers have a hard time with their kid not playing typical sports. Most of our kids are not really athletic. I know Garrett said he played football, but that's not typical with kids with autism at all. Most of them don't like to play sports. Certainly, it's hard for them to be on a team. If they play a sport, it'll be individual, likely. And that's as a whole. There are some exceptions. But the biggest thing we try to say is it's not about your child being interested in football. It's that they're going to have this amazing opportunity to have a relationship with a football player. And when the fathers specifically see, you know, a guy like your son George running around with their kids playing, or like they saw Ross playing, it is transformational. I mean, the father that has been out to that you met, that was paired with Ross Dwelley, and that it's life changing for the whole family. And all the stories he has that go along with it are just so organic and special. And I love that, because we're not trying to go, oh, you have to do it this way. We actually want them to get to be their own individual relationships with our kids. And that's something I hope we continue to do, is not try to make things cookie cutter, because in 16 years, what really works is the more individualized aspect, to let the football players be themselves with the kids and let the kids be themselves. We're at year end right now. We're doing really well with our year end campaign, but we're pushing hard to go into next year and be able to provide all of our programs for free. That's one of the biggest things that we hold, sacred for our families. They get charged 3 times more for everything with a kid with autism. They send their kids to surf camp, and it costs 3 times more for the kid with autism to go to a surf camp. So from day one, we wanted to be a safe zone. We do not have any hidden charges. We do not charge our families to provide them these programs, or to provide them guidance or mentoring, or all the things we do. We do not charge them. So it's all from donations of people that care.
Yeah, I think just kind of going off that, obviously the big one is, we want to keep doing what we're doing, and it isn't free. We make it free for our families, and that's through the generous support of the community. We get almost entirely private donations, and it's always a really intense process for us to keep the magic happening and keep everything working. And we really try to stretch every dollar we can. I think on a general note, kind of unrelated to ATPF, I think the big thing is just to have an open mind, to go with the flow, and to not necessarily prejudge. And actually, the football players in our programs, the athletes, and Ross is a shining example of this, are really, really good at that. Like a lot of times you would assume, the kids are playing with the football players after, right? They're playing catch, they're doing things that you would normally see on a football field. That really isn't the case, actually. A lot of times, they'll be kicking around the football like a soccer ball. They'll be, playing with maybe a tire that's on the side with the practice field. You're doing a lot of things that are probably a bit different than what you expect, but they're not bad. They're just a little bit different. And going with the flow and kind of being understanding, I think really goes a long way. I think a lot of the issues, when you ask the question, okay, why are families with individuals on the autism spectrum feeling isolated, not going out, not connecting, what question mark, why? It's because they feel judged. It's because they don't feel that empathy. They don't feel that understanding. They don't necessarily feel that care. So if you can provide it, it means a lot. And it goes a really, really long way, in a way that you probably wouldn't even realize to some of these families. And again, Ross and his relationship with the Dungans, I think, is a shining example of just how much of an impact just being there, opening your heart up, and just going with the flow.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The reason the kids don't look like you would imagine with the players, or the players not playing with them like you'd imagine, is because they're following the child's interest, and they do it naturally. And it's such a gift, because it leads to connection, and it opens up this father specifically to think, gosh, I should play with my child like that. It's fun. And they're just following the child around, and they figure out what the child wants to do, and they go with it. I think that's a really a really key point to how we have so much connection happening. How do we make connection when it's hard, when the connection's not as easy as a typical child?
Well, at least in my experience, a lot of those football players and or other athletes, they've been over the years told that they're just a little bit different. And they've had to work through not being bad, but just different in their own way sometimes, you know what I mean? And so I think they do have a lot of empathy, about someone that may not fit quite in the mold. They're kind of used to being outside the mold in that way. And I think it does create that. So, well, let me ask you this then. So last wrap up question, if there's anything else you want to add about the organization, but the one that we want to end with, particularly in this holiday season. So we got Christmas just coming up here in a few days, and then we're rolling into the new year. So just, what's one thing from each of you that gives you hope as you're kind of wrapping up 220 and we're heading into 221? What are those things that we give us hope as we enter into the new year?
I think, like Garrett was saying, we do a neuroscience conference, and this will be our 6th year when we do one this year, and we're committed to doing it even during this unprecedented time of sort of like not knowing exactly what the landscape is going to look like in 221. The reason I feel so hopeful about it is because I've seen a paradigm shift that I've wanted for a long time. And I hear myself saying typical, but I don't really want to be using those words anymore. It's really neurodiversity. And I see more and more of that happening in terms of people, even just in a lot of our dialogue today, that from you, Bruce, and you, Emma, of just, really accepting people as individuals. And I've always wanted at the foundation to show the positive stories and not illuminate the challenges we already know exist. And to really just have people realize that the way the neurodiversity, the essence of it is that the way the processor is working is different than a larger percentage of the population. And to look at that as a force multiplier instead of something that's weak. And one of the biggest trends that's been happening is CEOs in the biggest companies in the world, basically, that are not just domestic, but international. SAP being the undisputed leader right now is hiring people with autism under a program called Autism at Work. SAP alone saved over $40 million from one of their employees with autism figuring out a better way to do things. A lot of times engineering is an area where these people with autism will excel and solve the problems differently than engineers that have been there decades. We find that at Solar Turbine here locally. The CEO was on our panel. We have CEOs on a panel at our neuroscience conference, and they talk about they don't need their permission to grow the Autism at Work program because it's been a force multiplier. And one of my favorite things was during the Olympics, SAP showed a 7-minute video about their Autism at Work program, showing their employees throughout the globe. They have to be able to do the work. It's not been easy. They wanted to have 1% of their workforce, which I think would be 600 people, and they have 100. But we're really, really blessed by that because we have so many teens, over 100 of them, that want to go to work and want to go to college, one or the other or both. And to have these leaders in these big companies, and we have, we have a young guy right now who I'd like to be on our neuroscience panel, whose family's been with us since we started the foundation, who's really loves working at Amazon, who's here in San Diego. They have a big operation. And so the more and more I see of that and the way that they're treated and making, the same amount of money for the skills that they have that anyone else would, I see that as very hopeful. I see that as something that we've been involved in and we will continue to be involved in. That's why I brought up the neuroscience conference, because we really illuminate that Autism at Work, CEOs that are hiring, kids we know that are in those programs that are excelling and happy. And so that would be my hope, is that we continue to see our first generation going out and working jobs that they find really fulfilling and enjoyable.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit differently because I think the pandemic's been such an unusual thing. And I think it sets things up from a societal perspective to talk about things in a different way. So traditionally, right, we have a very rigid educational system. You have to be able to do A through Z. You have to be able to sit still, pay attention, not talk, those types of things, and a very rigid work culture, right? You have to come into work, you have to wear a suit, you have to do all these things. And I think with the pandemic, what people are realizing is that those things don't necessarily have to be true. And in the same way, where when you go to a company and you say, you know, can you give this autistic person a chance? They're a very talented individual. They just may need some support in certain areas. Now I think that's a much more normalized thing, because even if you're a neurotypical individual, you're going to need support in some areas. You know, people are realizing that talent isn't necessarily something. Talent has to be supported, and it's not actually that big of a jump to provide those supports to a neurodiverse person in a slightly different way than for a neurotypical person. It's a lot more similar, I think, than people may have imagined before this pandemic, when now you're kind of having to support everybody. I think the other thing too is, before I was talking about, you know, the effect of society's reactions to autism being very similar to the pandemic. And I think if when we come out of this, I think we're all going to value, you know, value the not isolating people, connecting with people. I think that's going to be something that's taken more seriously. And I hope, this is hope, that, you know, that type of empathy, that type of attention that I think people are realizing a bit more, does end up benefiting autistic people in the way that people can go and look at a family that may be struggling on a day and think more kudos to them for coming out and giving it a try, instead of, you know, something else, and really making sure that that families get included in a way that may not quite have been valued in the same way before. That's my hope. We'll see whether it fully comes to fruition, but I feel optimistic that it will.
And Garrett doesn't know, but we had our first planning meeting for the neuroscience conference, and Dr. Motri, who Garrett talked about, is the chairman of the conference. He that is his passion point, what you're talking about. His son's nonverbal, and he has a passion to, our conference always includes more and more, how can we do more for the nonverbal aspect of the autism spectrum. And so education and everything you just described is like a driving force for him at the university level, because he's very involved with UCSD. So he's not even just thinking about the primary education, he's thinking about all the way through, because a lot of times, you know, you get your kid all the way through high school and then there's nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. So Dr. Motri specifically, and you might, now that you've heard his name, see him, because he's like has a grant from NASA and he's doing mini brains, and he's on CNN, and he has a grant from NIH and like 17 people in his lab. He has the largest autism lab in the United States. He said he thinks it's actually the entire world, but he is the most committed doctor I've ever met. And I'm so grateful that he has a heartbeat for the autism tree family. And the reason that we do it is because what Garrett articulated earlier is we want these rock star, amazing neuroscientists that are studying autism to have an absolute heart connection with real children and families, which is where we come into the heart connection of it. So I hope that makes sense of why going into this 221, we do feel hopeful that we've learned some lessons that could bring a lot of positivity and new doors and new, you know, brighter futures.
Well, that's the most hopeful answers we've had
Yeah,
from
I was
anybody.
like, that was a lot of hope. I feel great right now.
Hey, I just sitting over here on my little log, I just want to maybe, I don't know, challenge, but just suggest, when you guys talk about neurotypical and neurodiversity, in my world, right, I think neurodiversity is more typical than neurotypical, if you know what I mean. I think
I do.
I think the diversity of cognitive approaches to seeing and understanding and interpreting and interacting with the world is much more diverse in reality than what our society allows people to actually express. And I think one of the difficulties right now in our world is historically people have had to be fit into these little boxes. But I think in reality, more of us are outside of those boxes in a lot of different kind of ways than the world is willing to accept. And so, I mean, in that autism world, and I know that feels like neurodiversity in that way, but I mean, I would like to think that we could think of neurodiversity in the same that we think about diversity of race and of religion and of all the other kind of things, and that there's a huge spectrum out there, and there's not good or bad or anything without judgment, and just learn to appreciate, you know, the diversity that's there. So like my background is, you know, in criminal defense, and 40% of my folks had some kind of diagnosis. I mean, it was typical for me. You know what I mean? In my world, almost half of my clients had some kind of mental health diagnosis of some type. And it was just normal. And so, and the more I got around that, and maybe my slice of the pie was just smaller, I don't know, but I really believe that cognitive difference is much more expansive than the world really wants to acknowledge. And we continue to try to place people in these boxes when instead, if we would give people more freedom, I think, you know, we could understand each other in a much deeper way and interrelate in a way that would be, I think, really transformative, instead of trying to tie ourselves to historical definitions of cognitive thought. So anyway, that's just my little spiel. So I'm all about the neurodiversity, and I think that's a term I'm going to carry with me. And you guys definitely give me hope. Your love and your passion, so integrity, intention, and love, I think, are great code words for us as we enter into the new year. So really, really appreciate you guys so much for all the work that you're doing. Garrett, thanks for sharing your story. Dana, the same. And so we'll be posting sometime between now and Saturday, probably. It kind of depends.
And when you guys aren't too busy during your season, we would love to have you come talk about anything you want. Everything you've talked about, even just sharing about yourself, Bruce, is very relevant. And so I would love to have you come over and enlighten us in 221.
I'm glad to share what I know, and mostly I have more questions than answers anymore, so I don't know, but we'll see. But so anyway, I look forward to that. That would be terrific, and maybe we'll get old Ross Dwelley involved, and we'll do an alumni trip to University of San Diego or something.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Emma, you better come.
Now that we're calling it mindfulness, I think there needs to be maybe a mindfulness book that y'all write for whatever people are dealing with, or maybe routines. And I don't know, your wisdom and compassion. And I think the overall thing that I'm taking away from this is like, difficult situations give us, like you were saying, Garrett, like this insanely different perspective, right? You're able to pull back and you're able to see things from a much grander place.
Yeah.
And
That's really
the
cool.
thing that has always come to me when I've been dealt those cards, or like I've had to go through something like that, is just an overwhelming amount of compassion and humility for not understanding what other people are going through. And also, I think the courage to be uncomfortable in those situations and not need to know. And I think when we can do that, it kind of brings us back to that human to human connection. So I've had chills this entire episode, so I'm like really excited to go back and watch it again. But thank you guys so much.
Okay.
And I am all in for doing anything with you guys ever. So
That'd be good. Okay. Happy holidays. Enjoy the
happy holidays. Thank you so much.
All right. Be safe. Enjoy your break.
Thank you.
bye.
Take care, guys.
What day? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, snack.
Hi.
Hi, Bubby. Okay, we have the one and only Beansicle on our show. Hi, Sissy. Okay, so we're gonna get right into our Ask George questions and see if Bean can make it through this whole segment. But so I have always been curious. This is actually an Emma question, but why did you like Xbox over? Because there's this whole surge about like PS5. And I know we played PlayStation when we were younger. So why Xbox now? What's the passion behind it?
Well, I was actually gifted a PS2. It was one of my first gaming systems besides my Game Boy Color, because I beat all the Pokemon games, of course. Still one of my favorite games of all time. But PS2 was my first system. Jack and Daxter. Hi. Played a lot of PS2 games. But then Halo 3 came out, and I got introduced to Halo 2 a little bit when I was a kid. You know, I was a little young, but when Halo 3 came out, I was 14, and my dad got me the Halo 3 limited edition Xbox. Whoo-wee, baby, and it was excellent. You can just turn the volume down on the side.
My bad. I'm taking this room story.
No, the whole thing's ruined. I wanted to start. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. Anyways, so I've been on Halo 3. Halo 3 is my favorite video game. I've been on Xbox ever since. Huge fan. And now I get to work with Halo, and it's a really cool thing for me because it is my favorite video game. So that's why Xbox.
Love that. Okay. What does my ear? Great.
So wait, that wasn't even a fan question. That was your question.
No, I was actually curious about.
I know, but like, no, this is fan questions. This isn't Emma questions.
I was curious. Okay. George, when did you get your first? So this is by Sandy Beach.
Hi, Sandy. Happy holidays. I hope you are having a wonderful day.
She wants to know, when did you get your first game ball and what do you do with them now? Do you have a display case or where do you put them?
Well, the way that we kind
And
of
what's your favorite?
The way that we do game balls with the Niners is like we'll do team game balls, so everybody will get one. I think the first one we got was after our first win, which was, who was that? That was over the Giants, my rookie year. So the whole team got a game ball. And then I think the next one we got one for the Tennessee game that we came back and had a 2-minute drive and won. I've got a couple Sunday night football game balls. I don't know if the game balls that I keep are like touchdowns or record stuff that I have kept. But my footballs that I do keep, we have like these cool football shelves that hang from my wall. And I have them both in Nashville and in California. And I do like them. Yeah, game balls are really cool.
What's your favorite one?
My favorite one? I got a couple, I guess, but one of my favorites was I kept the one from my 85-yard touchdown against the Broncos that got me over 1,000 yards for the first time. That was pretty cool. That was fun. It was a good time.
That was a good one. Okay, now on to some very
question?
exciting news. Yeah, because we're going to talk about this.
Oh, okay. Super duper exciting. Somebody got the number right. And that lucky someone who will not be named yet got the number right. And I'm not going to lie, I'm slightly disappointed that it took this long, honestly. I am disappointed, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Karina, because you did get it right. So you're incredible. Congratulations. Oh, I just gave your name, Karina. Great job, Karina. Congratulations.
She guessed almost every week.
You guessed every week and you just got it. Oh my gosh, you're hilarious. You're going to get the gloves. Congratulations. That is so cool. But thank you for your persistence. The number was 4-6 for my college football number, 8-5 for my NFL number, 0-3 for my wife, her basketball number in college, and 0-9 for my sister was her college volleyball number. And it was my high school football number. So congratulations, Karina. Happy holidays. I hope you're having a fabulous day, or another word I like to use is fantabulous, because it's fabulous and fantastic at the same time. Because why wouldn't you be fantabulous?
Okay, but either ways, you guys, either way, this is episode 15 of the Hidden Pearls podcast. We love you guys. Thank you so much. If you know of anybody who could benefit by being a part of the autism tree, please get on their website, do some research, listen to this interview, go ahead and reach out. I think the mindfulness practice that we talk about within the actual show is super, super important, whether you are dealing with autism or not. It's also insanely important, you guys. Let's be compassionate, right? Let's be compassionate with everything that's going on right now. The holidays are they can be great, but they can also be really sad and really triggering for people. And so if you need assistance in any single way, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to any of the organizations, but just know that we love you guys. This feels like a family, and we are always here for you. So thank you. And with that, that is a wrap.
Thank you for listening. And I just want to point out before we do go, if you couldn't notice or can't notice, me and my sister are wearing fabulous eyewear. This is part of, I'm going to give myself a little plug here just for fun, but it's backwards right now. Hopefully you can see it straightforward, but it says the Kittles. It's me and my wife's ZENNI collection, ZENNI. Sunglasses, glasses of all shapes and sizes and styles. Fun fact that not everybody knows is the Kittles is actually written out. It's my mom's handwriting because she has very cool and unique handwriting. And so I let her be a part of that too, which was really fun. But that's what the shades are. And also a big shout out to Cozy Earth for the nice sweatshirt. It really helped me out with my Christmas gifts for my tight end guys this year. And I know the guys like it. They're actually sitting on everyone's locker room chair. They'll get them tomorrow. And some of the softest stuff I've ever worn. It's in Criable.
Ooh.
I speak it at home sometimes.
Yes, he does. Okay, guys, well, stay safe, wear a mask, be kind to each other, be compassionate, and just spread some love, spread some joy, because as you can hear, there's a lot of things to be hopeful about. And so maybe it's not sitting right in front of you, but there are a lot of things in this world, even in this realm of our show, to be grateful for. So thank you guys so much. And with that, we will see you next week. Go Niners!
Just smile once in a while.